And there you go, live.
Okay,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, we've had some serious technical difficulties, but we finally made it. Welcome to a presentation from Nuwaupianism.com, where we're going to clear up a lot of the misinformation that Nuwaupians have put out. We're going to give you the facts by having people who were there, who participated, and who were victims of Malachi York and his sexual fetishes, and we're going to offer some clarity in addition to some closure. Ampu's here. We have Ruby Garnett, who has a book out talking about this
Hey.
thing. Yeah, how you doing, Ruby?
Hi, hey, Chuck. Hey,
Okay, we have Ruby Garnett, her book, Brother Tariq Noel, who was a victim that many of you are familiar with. And we also have, as a special guest, Nicole Lopez, who testified also at the York trial with Tariq, and she's going to explain to you a lot of things that you need to know or that you didn't know that you're going to want to know. Now, while we were going through this technical difficulty, we had some enlightening conversation, and because it was really necessary, we want to try to go right into it. And the first thing I want to do is I want to start with Tariq. Tariq, okay, a lot of people are familiar with you at this point from the last couple of videos. As a result of you explaining how your experience went, a lot of people, and particularly Nuwaupian, well, there's been a number of people who applaud you for the courage to be able to come out and address this head on, while you have the haters or detractors who have attacked you with a lot of crazy claims, of course, with no proof. One being that you recanted, that you. Well, let's deal with that part first of all. And for the people that may not be familiar with you, who are tuning in for the first time or watching for the first time, would you give them a brief background, and then we can go right into clearing up some of the misinformation that's been put out there lately.
Okay, yeah. Hey, by the way, so I'm Tariq Noel. I'm actually grew up in the community, the Nuwaupian that later became Nuwaupian community. I was involved in the case with the Malachi York case, and during that time, before the case, I had someone from a Nuwaupian and a family member who approached me about doing to find a way not to testify because they, came to me and told me like my sister would get arrested and my mom would get arrested if it went to trial. So they like at the time like they came to me and gave me scenarios where like basically my family was in danger if this went proceeded. So like people approached me and at the time, so um, one day they wanted me to meet up with the lawyers that was on the defense. Like I think Ed Garland was one of the lawyers like during that era time. So I went there to meet them with the intentions of like looking for options and ways to not testify in order to like basically, not have a case going on. And when I got there, like I sat at a table alone with the lawyers, and then they started asking me interview questions, basically asking me about my story and my life. And I ended up telling them the truth. So like at the end of that, at the end of that, when we left, you know, I got back in the car with the Nuwaupian and my family member, and then he was just like, oh, like I did it on purpose. Like I went there with the intentions, like I was gonna try to help, the cause, and then I went there and actually told the truth, and then like, so I didn't really get what he was, so like that's one example that people are using as a recantment or but that actually never that was before the case and before the trial, and that actually never made it any further than that because once I realized that, even whether I was not going to testify or try to get out of it, that there still was going to be a trial then I had to like I ended up writing my mom a letter explaining what happened to her, what happened in the situation, and and then once she found out, then we ended up like addressing it, and nothing was actually done about that. But that was just more so Nuwaupian people, or just people around me that was trying to get me to like look at the bigger picture, and then
Mhm.
the only other incident that could be talking about is years after the case, where again I was around Nuwaupian people, my stepsister, and some guy named Basil that used to that used to live on the land, and like they would just say things in my ears and like try to encourage me to kind of like look at like, because at that time I think that's when they had the recampment video with Habiba Washington, so they were trying to make it seem like they were just 1 inch away from getting him out, and they just need my story to say, like. So at that moment, it was like beyond everything else that I was going through. It's just like having them come to me and making it look like all I have to do is just sign a paper, and this can just all don't
Go
worry,
away.
everybody will be all right. After this, nobody's gonna bother you when this is over and stuff like that. So like that was the incident where it was just like, oh, uh, I signed like the affidavit that they typed up and wrote,
Okay,
and
okay, Tade. So I don't know if you get did they actually did they file what they typed up? Did they file what you signed?
to my knowledge, they did not follow it. There was
Exactly,
no, yeah,
exactly.
there's no,
Because
because,
anybody that knows Nuwaupians, if they would have had that, the first thing they would have done is we got another recampment or we have a recampment, and they would have jumped to it and then gotten lawyers involved, but nothing. So I think that myth has been cleared up. But go ahead.
yeah, and then also like when say per se, like when it comes to me, because I'll speak for myself, if they heard my name come up somewhere, they like, oh, they have to do research. They have to look back and see like, what do we have on him that is going to try to discredit him and make him look like, because they have to look far, far beyond, like, how you have to
That's
catch
a
up for a season.
character assassination. Yeah, that's called character. They want to assassinate your character. That's
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
used that tactic when he was always writing people. That character assassination tactic.
Yeah.
I would.
And I never really gave
I just want
people
to
a
add a little
reason.
thing. Okay, I'll wait.
No, I'm sorry. I never really gave people a reason to doubt what I have to say. So then they look for any kind of what they would say like a inconsistency. So I kind of think like, well, if I'm under the magnifying glass, if you put me under so much scrutiny and asking me the tough questions about what I've been through, why don't you ask the person that did this to me, or the person I'm accusing of doing this to me, the same critical tough questions, the same personal questions, ask him the same questions and see what he say on the spot in front of the people. Like, but people don't want to go there. They don't want to address that by asking me like, oh, did I do this? Did I do that? That never actually had any relevance as far as making things proceed forward or backwards. Like it was a non-event. It was just a picture of it's just a piece of paper with my name signed on it. There's
Mhm.
no.
Well, I want to add real quick on that topic that when that happened, and because I remember the time that I started kind of feeling something was different, I kept questioning Tadic and stuff like that. So it came out, and it was when I brought it to the attention of the the investigators who was doing the case and things like that. What came out is that they could have been charged because it was tampering with a witness,
Mm.
and they did not tell him that he's meeting with Doc's lawyers, and of course the lie and all those things. But Tadic was like, well, part of the stuff like that, he felt, that part of the people that was coming to him were his family, and he felt like, oh man, this guy just had a baby. He didn't want to press charges, but he could have pressed charges because it was an ongoing investigation, and it was actually tampering with a witness making false accusations and not disclosing that they wanted him to meet Doc's lawyer. So I just want to throw that out there.
So in essence, York's attorneys were illegally tampering with one of the witnesses who testified against York.
A witness who was a minor.
A minor.
Listed as a victim of a case. So yes. So I just want to throw that out there. That
and they even offered me baseball tickets. They offered me
baseball tickets.
Yeah, and I didn't think nothing of it, like, because I wasn't really interested at that. But but now that I think about it in retrospect, I'm like, well, it just was all kind of like a part of that. Just kind of to make it, because had I accepted it, then it would have just been like, we agreed to do this, like we just buddy, like we're casual, like like we was, like here's a ticket, like you're not just gonna give a random person a baseball ticket. You're gonna give it to somebody like that you know or respect in your circle, like. So like I wouldn't even have thought of that, like at the time, but like now that you get older, you start to look at things like the legality of things, because we just knew, like, hey, we had to tell our story and the truth, like we don't know the court process and all that. I mean, at least I didn't know until I learned those things.
But they're playing dirty with you. They're playing dirty with you doing that because they know you didn't know. They knew you didn't know. That's the whole purpose of it. Trying to manipulate the situation.
Well, hey,
and then somebody that would be in my predicament would not be inclined to just really be out there speaking about what happened to me. So it would be actually really easy to try to get me not to say anything about what happened, be just in the nature itself. You know what I'm saying? Be like, hey, like, just, don't say nothing. Like that's I don't want to say nothing. I don't want to talk about this. Like, like that's not really like, hey, let's have a conversation about what happened. Like that's not a thing I want to do, like, per se, like, but it's true. So like the truth needs to be like addressed, and it's like beyond time to even do that. Like,
right. So that interview that you had with Polite, because I posted it on the YouTube channel, and it's gotten a lot of feedback, especially in some of the chat groups. How did that? Well, not necessarily how it came about, but I mean, because I see that it got kind of heated. I mean, how exactly did that dialogue go? Was he? Did you think he was in some way convinced, in a sense, but regardless of it, he was going to go and, quote, worship his God, worship York as his God? Or do you think he was trying to reserve judgment until some more evidence came out, I guess, in York's favor? I mean, just what do you think on that?
Like his attachment to me per se versus his attachment to Malachi York is he's devoted more to him at that time that he doesn't know me. I'm a stranger. Well, not a stranger, but I'm one of the victims that he's gonna go meet and have a conversation with. So his ammunition is coming at me trying to prove his conspiracy. So once he figured that there's no like, because had there been a conspiracy, you'd be able to, like, push right through that, like, with the question. You're face to face with somebody, you can ask them the tough questions and whatever the case might be. So, so I think that maybe initially he wasn't as sure until he met me and spoke with me, like, and then through that, like, even though he may not fully, like, take it, but I think that it's just less, because I have less of an impact to him than somebody else that has more of an impact to him. Because if it's your brother, your cousin, like, you might be more like, you might send him money in jail, but that he did something wrong, but you might make sure his commissary is fine. So like he has more attachment to him than he does to me, but that's not, like, my whole purpose was just to tell you the truth. Like, you can ask me whatever you want. What day was Tuesday? Like, I'll tell you what it was. But if you want the truth, that's the whole point. So you trying to, like, him trying to, like, rationalize it and make it okay to, let us have this conversation, and it go further with you still, they're gonna defend him like that. Like
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in on that too because I watched the interview prior to this, and I noticed how the brother Polite just completely tried to disregard what you were saying, Tardik, when you were telling him, in those specific terms, was saying, this happened to me. I'm speaking about it, and he's trying to get on the topic of why he's locked up for so many years for that particular offense, and what did you think about that? And it's like, okay, and I like the way you separated. You were like, well, if you're talking about how I think you're asking about it, it sounds like you're saying that basically because he's a political leader and because he's a black man and this, that, and the third, he's being, unjustly or accused of whatever the case might be. But if you're talking about what he did, this is what I'm here talking about. It's two different things we're talking about, and really we can see that it doesn't matter. This is what he did. He violated some children.
Okay.
And that's the point. It's like it was completely an attempt to just completely and not even address the situation. He was talking about what if he molested 1,000 children? Would you still basically believe in the doctrine? What? And he's gonna choose to. He has to choose to still worship. The person while they're alive. And I was telling me and Tarek were talking about this earlier, and Nikki was talking about it earlier. If you're gonna worship another man, you might as well worship yourself, because he's a man, and that's what Tarek was trying to say. This is a man. People don't see the man. This is what this man did. So if you still choose to follow this man from that point, I have to question. But we already know where they're at. They're grasping. There's nothing else for them to mentally hold on to and grasp to make them feel better. This doctrine uplifted him, so he doesn't have a substitute for it. So his brain has to continue to cling to that because he's worshiping this dude. You worshiping a pedophile. That's the facts. But you got to overlook that, because then you got to say you worship a pedophile. What did that say about you?
And that brings the question, because one of the main comments that I hear a lot of is they always ask this question to me when I post this stuff: were you there? Did he molest you? So we have at least 3 individuals that York did molest, that did touch.
Oh.
So Ruby, what were you ever in the presence of Malachi York? And I don't know if they were teens, because sometimes they like to play.
Yeah, well, I never. No, well, see, we had co-wives as young as 15, probably maybe 14, 15. So
you said co-wives. You say co-wives.
Well, yeah,
I know what you mean, but for those that may be watching, they want to get some clarity.
Okay, well, for me, well, I go by Ruby for my book, but my name is Valerie. But when I was in there, I was known as Jamila, and I was one of his concubines and his harem, what have you, if people can identify with that terminology, and or big love, something to that effect, if people can.
Muslims are into polygamy.
Identify with that. They're into polygamy. It was a polygamous situation.
He capitalized on that.
Right. Exactly. So in that state of polygamy, we had other women, girls, and I can't call them women. They were girls, and the only witness I have personal experience is he would have us in different groups when he wanted to be intimate, or whoever was vying for his attention would all get together. So he had cliques that he would like to be around. And sometimes, like for me, he might put me with this person, these people, this set of people, I don't know, for whatever reason. But I was with 2 minors. I didn't realize it at that moment, because I'm in my brainwashed state. Like these are 2 of my co-wives. But I was like, at that time, I think I was like 20, probably 20 years old, maybe 21, and we were upstate, and he was with well, I don't know if I can say their names, but two.
Yeah,
Can I
I
say
know.
their names?
I mean, if you want.
Well, I don't know if they still go by Nejla and Habiba, you know.
Right.
So they were, you know, minors. They were minors. So you know, when I think about it now, I'm like, you know, my family was afraid for me to talk about it because they were like, well, you might get in trouble because you know, you were with the with minors or whatever. And I was concerned about that, but it's like, you know, when you're in there, you're in a different mindset because you've been brainwashed to accept that situation, you know, and thinking that they're women, you know what I'm saying? Because they've had their quote unquote issue, you know, they have their period, they're on their cycle, you know, that's what we were taught, you know. He'd always have this story about the Prophet Muhammad and Aisha being 9 years old, and he took her to be his wife at that point until she had an issue. All these little things that you get you know, indoctrinated with, so you don't know what's going on. But that's my witness. I was witness to him being with two minors. I was there with them, you know.
Wow.
So that's something that when I think about it, it sickens me. But you know, it is something that, you know, you have to deal with. And that's I didn't even go through half of what, you know, a lot of the children went through, you know what I'm saying? And it still does something to you. So it's a lot of different levels of disgust that you feel when you know, you were with somebody that did that, and you know that you were involved in that. You know, I never personally witnessed him do anything to any little children, you know what I'm saying? Except for, you know, Crystal coming to me. That's the first time I had any type of knowledge of that type of thing, you know.
What did she say?
She came, I was in the house, we were in Georgia. I was cleaning up in that big house that big house that he converted to a, you know, remember it used to be a barn, that
Yeah.
house with the barn doors.
103.
Yeah. So I'm upstairs and, you know, by the fireplace, you know, cleaning up and stuff. And then I hear the door open up, and I hear, you know, feet running up the steps. And the first person, it was Amala and Baylorda, you know, and they were coming up the steps. And I never, her little face, her eyes were darting sideways, like real fast, like this, you know, back and forth like this. And she was crying and trying to grasp for air, like she was hyperventilating. And she, you know, she said, Kadibu Baba can feed family, you know, Kadibu Baba can feed family. And I was like, that his penis was in her mouth.
Ugh.
Okay, that's what I was hearing her say, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it, because I was like, wait a minute, is she telling me this? And I can't, you know, I didn't have any doubt about what she was saying. It was just like extreme disbelief. And I had never seen, even to this day, I never seen an adult like that freaked out that bad, you know. And that I didn't do, I live with guilt because I didn't do anything. You know, I comforted her, and I talked to Amala. She denied anything happening, but I could tell that her face, you know, because you get in this mode when stuff like that happens to you. You kind of get like, you don't want anybody to know, so you kind of like, you don't want to say anything. So a lot of people say, oh, why didn't they say anything? Nobody, you feel dirty. You feel like you did something wrong when somebody molests you. Now, I've been molested as a child. Now, I didn't get molested in there. You know, I was too old, but, you know, I know what that feels like. I know the helplessness you feel because you're a child and this is an adult that is supposed to know better. It's supposed to that you look for protection, even though you just don't even, you're a child. You don't even have any knowledge of that kind of thing. You don't even anticipate something like that going on. You know, you're innocent. and then somebody robs that and steals that from you, and it changes your life forever. So her coming to me, all of that back, that feeling, you know, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to talk to him, but I didn't
What'd you
even know what
say?
I was gonna say. I had gone to his I had comforted Baylorda, and I put her to sleep, and I'm not sure, I can't remember where Amala went, but she left, and I went over to his trailer because he had a trailer at the time, and I was pacing back and forth, and I was telling him, I said, I got to talk to you. I need to talk to you. And I didn't know what I thought I was gonna do or say, but I wanted
What was?
to be like.
I'm sorry. What was his
Mhm.
reaction when you said you had to talk to him?
He didn't want to talk to me. You know, a lot of times if you didn't have, like, he had somebody in there with him. I don't know who, but you know, whatever he was doing, it wasn't the right time apparently. So
Okay.
he was trying to get me to go away. But he knew I was upset about something. So I don't know, you know, I just left that alone in terms of trying to talk to him, because then I got afraid. I didn't know what I was, if he knew that I knew what was going to happen. Not that I got afraid, you know, because you get in trouble for stuff and you can't even, I didn't know how to drive. I didn't know how to leave there by myself, you know, all of these things. And I'm like, but then what do I do? Because what if he does this to her again? You know, like, I can't protect her. It was a weird,
Well,
you know,
I want to say two things just to kind of interject with that. With Ballora, first of all, not only was she, you know, and people have this thing, how come it was never said? Things were said so many times. I've got in trouble for saying things. Ballora got in trouble for saying things. I remember there was an incident where Ballora was in the school because they had this little makeshift school. It had a couple of us teaching them because they weren't in traditional school. They were in and out of education. I mean, at one point, my sister was the only kid who could read because I taught her, you know. So Ballora and Amala, she's, you know, they're like 5 and 7 at the time. They were going around his house and everything like that. So she would have the tendency to start talking. And we've been trained, like, I was from Brooklyn. I was 13, just turned 13. Habiba was still, because I'm a few months older than her, she was 12. We were coming around from Brooklyn. So the fact of, you know, giving us reasons and threats and everything not to say anything was from the Ansar days. So before he had full control to do whatever the fuck he wanted. So Ballora, one school day, she was going off telling some of the kids what happened at Baba's house. So somehow it got around to it that she said that she did stuff for Baba, sexual things, whether it was sex or blowjob, whatever have you. She said something. So it got back to the office. So the crazy part when I think about this, there were two things that happened. I think it was Amina at the time, was in the office. And so that message went out to his office, go send somebody up there to find out what's going on with Ballora, what she's saying, come to the crux of it. This is coming from him. She goes up. Now one of us is called and said, go up there and tell Ballora she better tell somebody it was a dream or she's going to be in a lot of trouble. So by the time Amina comes up and asks her, why did you know what's going on? What did you say? Ballora is already threatened, and so she says, "Oh, I had a dream about Baba, and I told the kids." And she got in trouble for spreading a quote unquote lie and saying she dreamed about him, and she was told to say that. You know, and people say, how come people didn't tell? First of all, yeah, there was different groups of people. You know, people were treated differently. There were some people who were threatened. I remember there was a time where there was this thing where, you know, because even though there was a central community, you had to put in an application to be a part of the central community.
Right.
You had to be handpicked.
Right.
So there was a time in Georgia that he told some of us, because when we were Ansar days, when we Nati, Nuwaupian for the boys and girls, young, pure woman was supposed to be, pure 144,000. But when he started transitioning out of that, we became the Banats, which is just another Arabic word for girls. I'm trying to think of how it's going. I was making a point. But the thing is, there were some people that he would treat like, Khadija. Oh, you like to sing? I'm going to teach you how to sing, and then do stuff with them. There, when people would have to put in applications, he started telling, and he was going through the Banats. He was, popping us off one by one. So he told us, because sometimes he would have our little meetings and therapy meetings, all this bullshit, whatever have you. So he told us to get the word out to the other Banats that wasn't on the central camp, but that he said, if they was an Ansar or them, get the message out that they don't have to go to the office. Let one of you guys know, and I'm going to approve them to come up and go and skip that whole line of process of stuff. So, and he would even tell us, tell them, you guys are having fun. Tell them you're eating, because eating was a problem. Sometimes we had food, sometimes we did not.
We did.
At 18, I was almost dead in a hospital, and the message was sent from Amina to my mother to tell them, if the doctors asked me, I should tell them, I forget to eat, because my potassium level was lower than dead people. I was paralyzed from the chest down. My heartbeat was slowing up, all because I didn't have enough potassium, something simple. So some people he was telling, they would come up, and he was giving them 2 weeks, because at the time, there's different groups of people. Habiba's in the house, and the message was sent to them like, so you're up here, you have 2 weeks to be in his bedroom, or you're getting kicked out. So, and then when we were me and Habiba and them was in Brooklyn, first they used to tell us, in Sudan, a girl usually learns from a father's side, a male person in the family about sex, because if you get married, because remember, we're supposed to be virgins, raising like Virgin Mary, giving birth to the 144,000. So they would said, if you don't know about sex, your husband's going to leave you. So, the story that was given to some of us, because there's different stories given, that, you should, it's a part of Sudanese culture that a male person in the family teaches a person about sex. And so, from when we were 12 and 13, when there was one summer that happened, that they sent the message that let some of the girls come to the office and learn skills and work, and they was all in the mailroom helping out different things, whatever have you. Then it started separating some of us and saying, well, you girls go to his house, or you girls help his main wives. There was different ones at the time, and started even separating down to that. We couldn't even talk amongst ourselves, and it was always a thing of who said something, and sometimes it was given this thing of, oh, you guys are special, and if you say something, people are going to be jealous of you, and this is that. He told us that, the boys, because we're, getting to be teenagers, and, we couldn't have boyfriends. It was always a thing about, if you find anybody kissing or liking a boy, you need to say something, whatever have you, all these things. But then when we started getting around him, he was just like, if you guys do this, I'm going to get you guys pizza and soda. And we're like, wow, pizza and soda? We're eating tofu and TVP.
Or not at all. Or not at all. How about that?
No, but I'm talking about before he had control, when it was a system of, this is the food department, this is this is the person over the food. They had a system. Then the food was separated throughout the community. But we had some horrible looking mystery food, and so he was telling us, do this, and I'm gonna get, he started bribing people and things like that. And and so some of it was like, don't tell. But I do remember one time that me and Habiba were leaving his house at 13 years old, 11 o'clock at night, and one of her mothers, her second mom, was like, where are you guys coming from? And we're like, Baba's house, we didn't call him Baba at the time. It was Molana or Abu, whatever have you. And so because what would happen, he started separating some of us, and we were sent to his house to help whoever the wife was at the time clean up and stuff like that. But then he started saying, while these kids are working, learning a skill, you guys watch cartoons. you guys, I think the first time he showed something, and the thing is some people he just forced stuff on, and some people he eased it on. I remember being 13. I can't remember what age I was, but it was like way back then. And I'm in his, first of all, the first time I went in his office, because I never was like in his presence. We see him, oh my God, he was
mystical.
You're trained to like, this is this man, he's an angel, he's a Melchizedek, he's all this stuff. The first time I was in his house, I was silent. I was like attention, and he had to like, oh, relax. Then he was like, oh, you can watch TV. Oh, when I saw him drink water, I was like, he drinks water? I was blown away. So one time we're in his house, because he started like the girls who was going to his house, we didn't always have to work. Sometimes we could watch cartoons. Sometimes we could play in his Dr. York clothes, and that was exciting for us because we were in Muslim clothes and had to be covered. And then he would tell us, oh, it's okay, you guys see each other's bodies, and this is that, and try to encourage little things. And he had this fold-out accordion paper, like a little card. It looked like a card. And he walked up to me, and he opened the card, and it flipped out, and it was just a whole bunch of penises with funny glasses. And I was just like, oh, okay, So, and I know Tadic said something about some cartoon, a porn cartoon, and I remember him putting on Caligula in his house.
The movie Caligula? Wait a minute.
Yeah, oh my God.
The 79 movie Caligula?
Yes.
And with the horse head in the bed, Caligula.
Yeah, and so he had some of us bringing us around in groups, and there was like two sisters. There was Seda Radia and somebody else, Seda Thought. It was a couple of them. So these two sisters were assigned to different groups of girls, and somehow, because we're in closed environment, we started talking, but it was always a thing of, oh, who said something? I didn't say nothing. Did you say something? No, I didn't say something. Well, he wants to know who said something, whatever have you, and, we can't have no rumors, whatever. And so we've been threatened and trained from Brooklyn days
for a long time.
Even times when I worked in the girls' house, and people say, oh, why do you say certain things? It came up before. One time the message got sent to me like, oh, Doc is mad at you because now he got to keep some of the kids away from his house in Athens because now everybody's looking here and this is that. Before. Another time when I started working in the girls' house, and I was just like, what did I do? Now, the irony, this is supposed to be a religion that's protecting children. The irony of it is, if you were sent to the kids' house to work with the kids, you're like, what did I do? I'm in trouble. That was considered a lower job because
it was like a punishment to work with the kids.
It was a punishment.
For some of the people in the inner circle, the family, the Banats, whatever have you, if you were sent to the kids' house
from the office to the
office, that was
from
like,
the office
I'm
to the
in
kids'
trouble.
house. That was a demotion.
And you're trying to figure, what did I do? Did I say something? All this stuff. So that was programmed for years. And when I worked in the girls' house, and I was wondering, am I in trouble? And I didn't even remember the time because Nathada, I don't know if Jamila, if you remember Nathada. She was a little
I know Nathada. I remember Nathada.
She had that little keloid.
That bump on her head, that lump on her head.
Yes, and she used to call him Nathada. God. He loved it, And when we were in Brooklyn, she was sent to the girls' house, and she thought she was in trouble. And they were like, no, you're not in trouble. Then a secret message went to her that you're not there to work with the girls' house. You're here to work with these 7 girls. So when Doc wants one of them over there, they could always say, because remember, we couldn't go anywhere by ourselves. We're in a line,
I remember
2 people after Maghrib, sunset prayer, you're inside the house.
Yeah.
So for us to be on the streets by ourselves after Maghrib, it was a huge what's going on. So she was put in there because it was starting, people were like, how come, Habiba's mom asked her, not her biological, her second mom, the Puerto Rican lady. Can't remember her name.
Well, I'll think of it in a second.
But yeah, so
I know who you're
we're
talking
leaving
about.
his house 11 o'clock at night.
Maria. Maria.
Yeah, Maria. And she was like, where are you guys coming from? And we're like, oh, we're coming from Abu's house. What are you doing in Abu's house? It's 11 o'clock at night. And we said what we were told to say. We fell asleep. We were watching cartoons and we fell asleep, and so we're going home. And because she questioned, there was a message sent for her husband to beat her up because she started rumors about him.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Nathada?
No, not Nathada. I'm sorry, Maria.
Maria. Oh,
so she questioned us. But Nathada, she was sent to the girl's house, the Muminati's house, to work. But her job was to work with only some girls. And during that time, they started bringing some of the girls in. And with example, there was a couple of us, she started bringing in one by one to learn how to do a blowjob on a dildo in his bathroom. What? Yes.
Whoa.
So, and how you do it, and hold your breath, and you try it, and this is that, and oh, are you ready to do it on him? And I don't know, I'm nervous, and having us come in and taking these videos. I was a late bloomer. I was so skinny and flat-chested forever. I was 15 when I got my period. I always looked young, and sometimes I think about that, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Because she had me come in one time, did this video with me taking off my clothes and turning around, and gave me the dildo to play with. I'm like 13 years old, looking like I'm 10. And then she coming back to me telling me, oh, he liked the video. So
they made videos and they sent them to New York.
Yeah. And so, and she, or when the girls would go out, when she started working with us, and be it in the house with the Mominati, when the girls would go to the playground, she would try to encourage the ones of us that was going to his house, no, stay behind. And she would have us in a circle. They had these sex books that she would have us read and try to tell us, well, oh, it's okay if you touch another girl, and what would you do, and this is that. And she's coming from his house. She's coming from the back office, not the office, from the back office.
The back office.
House, So when I was put on the land in charge of the girls, and I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? I'm trying to rack my brain, and then the message comes to me, oh, no, when Doc wants Amala and Ballora over there, whatever have you, we're going to call you to send them over. And I was like, oh, damn, And my thing is, because we were beat so much in the mosque, I couldn't beat the kids like how I was raised being beat for every little thing. Sometimes we get beat every single day.
Really?
Crazy wound. Hell yeah. I mean, I used to get teased about getting beaten, and because the girls were like, okay, nobody cry. And I'm new to this, so I'm just like, I'm not used to getting beat like this, and to the point where I could take it. I could put out my hand and take it. So me working with the girls, I'm young, I'm like in my early 20s. To me, it's no really, like I wasn't around people. That was the first time I'm under the same household with my own sister, because from we moved in the community, she went with the girls' house, I was with my girls' house, whatever, we all were separated. So, which is a whole nother thing, because Tati and Amala were 6 months and 2. I was 11. So I was just like going through trauma since I got there, like, what's going on? So, when some of the girls, because I wasn't beating them as, which they used to, some of them started confiding in me and telling me stuff. And so I wasn't even thinking of the time, this pattern. I'm just like, oh gosh, Doc always says, don't let rumors start, blah, blah. So I'm, I called Habiba at the time because she was the main wife at the time. I'm like, hey, these kids are getting upset because, when you're doing stuff with children at such a young age, you're going to quit, you're starting their sexual activity before they're even ready. So some of the kids we're doing these stuff with him, and we want to mess with the boys, but they weren't allowed to talk to the boys. So some of them were actually getting upset. And so they would talk, shit about it. Like, why we got to go to his house and clean his house and suck his penis and give him candy and send him back home, And so I was like, well, or some of the girls were told, oh, if you do everything that we say, then we're going to buy you clothes and this is that. And then the twins come up and he started taking them shopping. They're like, wait, what? You just told us. Let me for
the benefit of the audience. The twins were Bun's 2 daughters, right?
Yes.
Uh, did they
And
come
so
in? They came in at a later period.
yeah, I mean, they were from the Ansar days, but they weren't in the central community. But at some point, they moved up onto the land in Georgia,
Oh.
and he immediately grabbed them in his circle and started taking them shopping and taking them here and taking them there. So some of the girls were like, Dad, we're being told, oh, do this, and, I'm going to, because some, at that time, it wasn't like back in Brooklyn when clothes were given out to the children. Everybody has clothes, how they, when he wasn't in charge of stuff. When he was in charge of stuff, he did it on his whim, whoever he liked. People had to move
Favorites, all of
around.
that.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
get a paper and a pencil. I'm going to distribute who's in each house and switch them around. Even upstate New York, when we were going upstate New York as teenagers, and before he built that big house, there were a couple of trailers, his trailer that he lived in, and then there was a couple other trailers. So he put some of the when more girls came up, he separated and put the girls he was having sex with in one trailer next to his trailer and the other girls in the other trailer. So he would go shopping and buy us food, and the other ones had to rely on the office to go get food. And he said he didn't want, he wanted to be, so the two trailers that was together that he eventually built this big house on top of was our house and his house, our trailer and his trailer, because he wanted to be able to come in whenever he wanted to without no problem.
Through that trailer,
And then,
I remember that trailer under the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just, and when I told her, like, some of these kids, they're complaining, this is that, and she was like, tell them that's how it is, like, suck it up, that's life. And I was like, we said the same thing at their age. It didn't even occur to me what I said. It just came out, and eventually that started saying, like, whoa, wait a minute. This is like, I didn't, so it started to grow on me.
That's all you knew, though, but that's all you knew.
Yeah, because just
you didn't know anything else.
And I was miserable, like, I used to complain. People said stuff. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, people say you didn't say nothing. I'm talking to him. I used to write him so many letters how I wanted to kill myself. I hated my life and why it got to be this.
And what did he say? What did he respond with?
Oh, either he would ignore it, or he was saying, "Oh, you're smart. You're not, or you're crazy, or this is that, or you just want some attention, or whatever." And
so you're talking about? Wait a minute. You're talking about committing suicide, and Malachi York is blowing it off as you're smart, no big thing.
Yeah, and so to me, people talk about who said something. I'm talking to the man in charge. I'm talking to my father, because for the most part, I was raised not just in the family, but at one point he started telling me that he's my real dad, So, and it was always this issue of, is he my dad? Is he not? I guess my mom felt like, oh, he's trying to be a dad to me, so she went along with it, thinking it's the right thing to do. But he started telling me he was my real dad. So he's doing this stuff, and I'm just like, he's my father. And there was a time I was just like, because I was always in the middle of, when he did stuff with the kids, sometimes I would be forgotten because he's also having sex with me. But then there's times when he did stuff with the girls he was having sex with, he couldn't bring me along because I'm his daughter, and it would look weird, So I was always in that little weird sweet spot. So, and I would tell him, I would talk to him, I would and then I was like, I don't want to do anything anymore. I don't want to do this. I just want a father-daughter thing. That lasted for like 2 weeks, and he started dogging me out and saying, you'll never be anything.
Putting pressure on you, that peer pressure, that ostracization. He would do that. That he would control us like that. He did that. To hear this some of this stuff.
So people
really
talk
everything.
So people say, he can't.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying one of the things that people always throw around is nobody says stuff. People said stuff. Over the years, people got threatened about being quiet. Belorv said stuff, to her mom, to different people. Nobody had any control over things. Or we were told, like, hey, that's life. And then you get used to it. It's like one of those things that people know, and even the people may not be there, something's up. Because if I'm 15 and Habib is 15 and she's pregnant, she was
pregnant at 15, yeah.
She was pregnant at 15.
She was pregnant at 15, And sometimes when I think about it, and I remember that he was upset with her for getting pregnant, as if she put the sperm into her vagina herself. Sorry for being so graphic, but and I'm thinking about that. I remember her trying to, like, oh, I can't have this baby and all this stuff like that, and we're like trying to figure out like what can we do so he's not mad, and people looking at her like if we're
like it's her fault.
We had no access to people, you know what I mean? Like people saying all these things. We were personally groomed by this man, even to the point where we used to stand guard, falling out because we're in this hot ass sun.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
By this man all these years, people couldn't talk to us. People couldn't men couldn't look at us. The boys our age, they were told, like one of the some of us like some of the boys, and he's like, oh, they don't want to talk to you. And they stopped talking to us. And I was like, wow. And one of the boys I ran into like years later, and I was like, in conversation, like, why did you guys stop, like you just stopped talking to us. We were friends and everything like that. And he told me, he said the brother came to him and a few of the boys and said, Doc said, your mommy said at the time, we don't care what you do with these girls, but if you're caught talking or doing anything to those girls, we're beating you up. Telling to other little 15-year-old, 14-year-old boys, who's going to talk else? But it was also systematic to separate us from the Minoon, so we're not talking, and separate us from ourselves, so nobody's not talking, and putting people, he didn't like people to have friends, he didn't like people to have close, if you're close to your mother, you're close to the girl, he was like, I don't have that, because he was just like, my mother abandoned me, and
he started talking about
nobody else. So only people who are 110% loyal to me, those are only people that I feel is worthy of me training. Because he was just like, oh, if someone's smarter and richer than you, picks you to train, So there was a lot of stuff going on, and people knew, he's him sitting on the porch giving some of the young kids, he used to get the long icy pops giving out to the kids, and like, oh yeah, I like how she's doing this and whatever have you, in upstate New York. But he was, he went from telling me, because at one point when he was upstate, he tried to make it a little different. So the women who had young children, they had their young children in the house, so they had their wives with their children in those houses, and they were separated. Versus in Brooklyn, it was just, these are the kids, these are the age groups, these are the boys, these are the girls. They try to, whatchamacallit. So at one point, my sister became the only girl in that house. So he went from telling me, oh, she's going to be a tomboy, telling my, different people, she's going to be a tomboy if you let her just hang out with the boys. You should send her up to the house with a FIFA and let her come to the house. And he would tell me, why don't you, take her and teach her layout? Because I was in the layout department at the time, the art department at the time. Why don't you teach her these, like hang out with her and whatever. So I'm like, okay. And like, I know that's my sister. I say that's my sister, but I wasn't raised with a connection of that's my sister. So I'm just like, okay, bringing her to the layout department, letting her do little things, giving her stuff like that. And then he sent a message to me like, oh, you're trying to keep me, you're trying to keep her from me, and this is that. And I was like, no, I'm not, you told me to teach her what I'm doing, so I'm spending time with her and teaching her. And so I had to go tell my little sister, no, go to Baba's house, And then he's sitting there with a few people. My sister was 7 at the time, and he's telling us he gets more turned on by my sister than some of his wives. He's sitting there with grown people, young people sitting right there saying, so it's just something about her that turns him on, because he would have fantasies, and he would, when he's in bed with you, he would tell you those fantasies. He'll do stuff with you and talking about somebody else. Male,
really?
female,
he's done that with us too in different ways. But yeah.
Was that like a signal for you to say something to that person that he has a fantasy about, so you can bring them within that circle?
Sometimes he'll just talk about it. So he could like. There's some people he just jump on right away. There's some people he will pray on them a whole year. You know, he'll be talking about it, and sometimes he'll try to ask us, oh, are you doing this? Are you doing that? He would try to incite for us to do things, and if we don't want to do it, he's like, oh, you're corny, you're a chicken, you're this, you're that. So he would always try to push you to say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. You know, there's some incidents where one of the guys that, you know, was wind up being one of the people that he would always have me around, he was telling me about that situation like a year before he ever brought the guy into the place, you know. And so, you know, like, you become numb to these things. You don't think about it, you know, but you know, like, you know, one person I told him, I said, yeah, he was talking about your brother, and he said something about, you know, he kept asking one person's mom, are you sure they're not a hermaphrodite? Are you sure they're not this? I remember him talking about saying, you know, about my brother one time, saying like, oh, he may be gay, so you need to find somebody to do something to him, find an adult to do, you know, a woman, one of the sisters to him, so he doesn't turn out gay, you know. But it's all just to, you know, like, and you're having this conversation, so it's just like, you know, and I think that's also part of that thing of people don't want to talk about it, because even if they were not there physically in the bedroom, when you really look at it, he said a lot of things, and people knew, like, people would know, like, you know. And if people did say, there was this Korean lady came in,
Ginger Chang.
Yeah. And
yeah,
so I remember when he brought some people to Georgia. It was a small group. I was with one of the first groups to go to Georgia. It was like 2 vans, about 8 or 12 of us in the van. And she comes up there.
Okay, Nikki, you're getting into an area that is goes into another line that a lot of his followers like to push, which is transporting minors across state lines for the purpose of sex. So he actually transported kids down to Georgia from upstate.
Yeah, well, we were teenagers when we came to Georgia, but the charges that he was, what he was charged for during the case. Now, mind you, some of the things that they said they don't even want to charge him for, because they felt the jurors will feel is way too bizarre. Like, there's no way he could have done those things. So they actually held back a lot of stuff. So as much things came out in the courtroom, which still was not everything, you know, some things didn't even come into the courtroom that was discussed, because there was just like, nobody's going to comprehend that this man is doing all this. So the thing that he was charged with, because what he started doing is he would have these trips to Disney World, where he would take people, but he would take groups of people and go to Disney World for the weekend and come back. And of course, if, you know, he's having sex with these people. So quite often there was a couple of times where he brought some of the kids. I remember there was a time where, my sister, she started, I guess, her own way of trying to hopefully not get picked, because what he would do sometimes is saying, oh, these girls are around me because they're good, you know, so that's why they're different from the other girls, and I'm going to train them, and I'm going to this is that. So my sister started rebelling, and so, you know, hoping to make it harder for her to be around them, and it still didn't work, because sometimes he would tell me, she needs to come and see me, or I'm kicking your family out. He told me that many times, and I would just have to go and tell my sister, you know, because she was like, I don't want to go there, and I'm like, you have to go. He's going to kick all of us out. And this is, you know, when we're raised thinking this is all we know, I don't know anybody on the outside, the devil is going to destroy us and this, and we can't catch on the outside. You know, you don't want to leave. So, you know what I mean? You know, so to me, to have to tell my sister, you're going to have to go see Baba. You know, because he took some trip, you know, and he would tell me, because he was taking one of the trips with some of the girls, with Sakina and all those people. And he wanted her to come around and like, because I guess, because he also liked this control thing of people begging him for forgiveness and begging him what
Oh
they did, and
gosh.
so
Yeah.
he, it wasn't enough that he's mad at you. He wants to be mad at you, and then you constantly come
And then
to
you grovel. And then you grovel. Yep. You
are you
find
still mad at me?
anything. Yeah.
There's times I got in trouble because like if I said hi and he didn't say hi, I kept it moving. And they're like, oh, you didn't stop. I'm like, he didn't say hi to me. Oh, no, you need to go say. And I was just like, because sometimes I would get like upset with certain things. So I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. Like, why am I in trouble? Why put me in trouble and then say, well, you're not trying to get yourself out of trouble and you're not trying to find out. And, and then when you do talk to him, then he's ignoring you. And I'm just like, this is stupid, But he would tell me, like, she needs to start coming around. I'm planning this trip. He wanted her to go on one of the trips, but she wasn't coming around. And then there was a second trip, and then she did go. But she wasn't. So the charges he was charged for wasn't that he brought us from New York, from Brooklyn, New York to upstate New York. So he took us to upstate New York for the summer and then kept us there. We were all minors. We were 15 and under, and
was this after around what time was this? Because I know that when Bilal Phillips came out with the book and he became all paranoid about being
rebuttal to the
attacked.
slanderers or something
Yeah.
like that. Or was that
Yeah.
Is that 91? Was that 91? Was it 90?
Oh no,
Was it
I mean
91?
I
some
think
of
it
the
was
year,
about
89? 89. It was
89.
89. It was 89.
Because
Yeah.
that was when he made a shift and went into this Hebraic type of doctrine. Had all of y'all take off the kimars.
Well, that was before the time, because the thing is, the few of us that he was doing stuff to, he brought us upstate New York on a couple of trips because that's what he started doing. He was just like, oh, these are the special ones. I'm gonna take them up because he would sometimes go upstate New York for the
When it was
weekend.
brand new. Yeah, when it was.
Well, yeah, it was there, but they didn't use it as much, so he would go up there. And then eventually he brought us up there. We're thinking that we're there for the weekend, and then it became the summer, and then we're thinking, okay, we're going to go back, because I remember I had finally got enrolled to this art school, high school, and I was so excited to go because I was just like, oh, great, I'm finally going to get some art things. And then, we were supposed to leave because it was like, oh, we're just going to go on a vacation up there. Okay. Oh, we're going to stay for the summer. Okay. Then it was just like, well, he's staying, he's moving up here, he's trying to transition and bring whoever he needs up there and leave the others behind and try to make Brooklyn into a regular mosque, because he was also always trying to monetize, the community and make his circle of people that he had to provide for smaller and smaller. So he tried to break off from Brooklyn and go upstate New York. And he would take us, and I was like, oh, but I'm supposed to start high school. And he was like, well, you could go down there and go to school, but you may not make it up here. And sometimes that's what the devil does. The minute you trying to do something, the devil's going to put something in your way, and this is that. So I was just like, I wanted to go to, I was like excited about going to this school, and he was like, no, you got to stay, and so I stayed. And we were minors then, and it got younger and younger and younger there. And then when it got to Georgia, when he tried to move some people to Georgia, and he was going through the list and saying who's he's going to take and not take. And, during the time, I was just like, I had stopped trying to do stuff with him, and he said okay with it. And then he started dogging me out about it. Then he started saying, oh, he's making this move to Georgia. And even though I'm funny and smart, I'm not going to make the trip because I don't have what it takes. And everybody's looking like, why would you? You're always around him. How come you're not going? And I couldn't, I don't, the only reason was because I didn't want to have sex with him anymore, until he forced me.
You made that clear to him? You made that clear to him?
Yeah. So, but then he forced me to do it anyway. And so I was just like, okay, well, I can't, there's nothing that I could do. So I wind up coming down, coming down to Georgia with the first trip that he moved some of us there. But what he was charged for was for the kids that he brought to Disney World and had sex. Because the thing is, too, with people like me and Habiba, even though we're victims, they wanted to use us as witnesses because they said the statute of limitation ran out for us because we were older at the time that the case came involved, but they wanted to use us to show the pattern because the pattern started from New York. You know, we were kids doing stuff, and, you know, so they wanted to establish that pattern. So that's why they wanted us to testify and talk about it. But, you know, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Someone else speak.
No.
No, I'm listening because a lot of this is the first time I'm hearing a lot of this too, and it's linking up with a lot of things that I remember happening, like going back to Nathara. You know, I remember her coming. I met her, and she started coming, and that's around the time I was around him. I was in Brooklyn, like we you know, back in his apartment in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And she would come by to clean and stuff like that, and she struck me as quirky. Like one time we were cleaning, and he had this thing she called, it was like a talking head, and she called it Zoltron or something. I don't know what it was, but it would talk. So she had asked it if it could. She said something sexual to it, like something to the effect that was really crazy to me. Like, oh, I want to suck Zoltron's, you know, whatever. And I looked at her like, what do you know, it was just really weird. So I'm thinking, you know, it was something weird. So I mentioned it to Doc, we called him, and because I was like something strange about her, and I noticed that she was around the girls. So I was concerned about her state of mind, saying something. She just struck me as weird. But then he made me feel like she got in trouble for saying it. But then I started seeing her come with girls, and I didn't make the connection because I didn't think that way until one time, and this is way after Nathara. He stopped having me come back there with her. So I don't know like what she was doing after that. But then I remember, you know, I was going back there by myself at times to make his tea, and making his tea was like this big deal, you know. But
You had to be chosen.
You had to be chosen to make his
tea.
tea. It was like
and
a special
taste tester.
Yes.
You were prepared. You were ready to make his tea.
Okay.
If you knew just how he liked it, you were ready. It was like you arrived, you know.
Yeah.
So I knew how to make his tea, so I was making his tea. And I remember he used to, like Nikki was saying, he would tell you these crazy stories. He just used to tell you these stories, and you're just like, is he testing my morality level, or is
Were
he,
these sexual stories?
Yeah, it was always sexual stories. He would tell you these stories. Like one time he told me about this. She was a Mu'minati, and but at the time he was telling me about this Mu'minati, one of the young girls. The youngest wife he had at that time was this sister named Amala. She was 16. And at that time, I think I was 19. So he started telling me how he used to take this Mu'minati, this particular girl, in the back just to look at her ass. Just the way he was talking. And her ass was so big and so, you know, that he was telling me these things he wanted to do to her. And I'm looking at him like, okay, but she's a Banat. But then I was like, well, maybe, is he going to do this? Because he had wives that young. She was the same age as the youngest one at the time.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm trying to rationalize it because I'm rationalizing everything because that's what you do in your brainwash. So I'm saying, okay, but is he going to make her his wife? Like, to me, the only thing that was wrong was that he wasn't talking about making her his wife. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, why is he doing that to her, putting her in this position but he's not promising to make her his wife? And it was something, and all of a sudden, you know, she came and talked to me, and I'm, telling me she wanted to be one of his wives, and I'm like, I hope that it works out for you. But then I think her parents had a problem with it, which they obviously should have. And then she was gone, you know what I'm saying? But it was just a strange. It was a strange exposure to weirdness because I remember being with him and he put on like the first time I was with him intimately. You know, I remember trying to play sleep because I was in a bed with like two other sisters, and I heard them, you know, being intimate. So I kind of wanted to fake like I was asleep because I had never been exposed to that type of situation.
So they were having sex while you
they were having
were...
sex right next to me, right? They would their bodies were touching me, like moving me, and
Oh
I'm
my,
like
yeah.
trying to act like I'm sleeping
Yeah.
because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, you know.
How old were you
So
again?
I was 19, you know, at that time. So I didn't, but I still I had never been exposed to group sex like that. You know what I'm saying? So it was scary for me, but he looked down and he was like, "Oh, she's trying to act like she's sleeping." So I was like, you know, you think he knows it, like he's see all, know it all. So I'm like, oh, I can't fake, you know. So I opened my eyes and whatnot. But it's just, you know, there are times he put on like these crazy videos of like animals having sex, people having sex with animals, and I mean,
whoa, wait a minute, hold on. He
yeah,
was
he put
showing
on a
bestiality movies.
yes, I saw, and I
Or those
when he
Thai
put that
boys.
on, yeah,
He wanted
and I saw. Yeah, and then he put on a gay porno one time with three guys sandwiching each other. It was like he would do stuff like this, but and
Did
I'm hearing that he would do this to the girl. Like when Nikki's talking, I'm like, okay, wow, you know that he was perverse. He told stories, strangest stories, and it was just
say,
like
what did he say when you're sitting here? You're talking about Baba and your mom Asa, and he's Dr. York. He's showing you gay porn, right? What was his justification? What did he say? Did he say what did he say?
Well, one of the things he told some of the boys is, you know, it's not gay if you suck the Pharaoh's dick. That's a rite of passage. It's something to Osiris. So I don't know what he told you guys, but I know he was telling some of the boys that, some of the younger boys that.
See, I when he put it on, I was like, I asked him, I said, what is that? You know? And he said, you never saw anything like that? And I said, no. You know, the most I had seen, like, you know, I used to hang out in the city, in the village. I saw guys kissing. Like, I never, but, you know, I was like, you know, that's whatever. But I didn't know why he was putting it on. He didn't give me any explanation as to why he was putting it on. And he just let it play. But he wanted me to watch it. So in my mind, you know, a lot of things like that, when it blows your mind, because it blew my mind, you sit there and your mind is blown. So you don't really, I didn't really know what to say at that point. I didn't say anything else. I just watched it, and I was just, you know, just like, is he trying to test my morality? I couldn't figure out I couldn't.
I think he does that just to kind of, you know, not just test you, but also kind of numb you out, because he used to tell us all types of stories. He told us about when he was in jail, and I guess he shared the cell with this Puerto Rican guy, and they were doing all type of stuff in the jail. You know.
Wait a minute. Hold it. Now this is something that Donnie mentioned in the Nuwaupian debate forum. She was Donnie Addison. She was talking about when he had anal sex with her.
Mona.
She made a point that he made a comment that it was like being back in jail.
Yeah.
He was wait a minute. He was talking about he had a cellmate in jail that he was having sex with.
I heard about that.
Yeah, well, that's
he didn't
the
tell
thing.
me. He mentioned him, but not.
Because the thing is, that kind of touches on another point of people, like some of them, Minati, that they left during the Ansar days because their mom left for whatever reason. Yeah. And so they miss a lot of that, and they were spared, you know.
Thank God.
And you know, some of them, they feel like, well, maybe his intentions were good and power corrupt, but to me, he was always corrupt. Like he would tell us,
He was always, yeah,
because like back in Brooklyn, and we would have meetings with the Mu'minun and Mu'minati, and he would tell us how back in the days before the community was a community, when it was starting, how they used to go and rob colleges and stick up people to get money, and they rob, the publication department, they needed typewriters, so they robbed a college, got all of the typewriters, and then they brought him and the brothers did this, brought it back, and the sister's like, well, it needs a ribbon. So they went back and robbed another college, brought the ribbon back. That's the wrong ribbon. So they go back in another college, and then he used to tell us like how, back when he was in some hood, and I guess he had some nickname of Crazy Horse and all that, how him and his friends, they would sometimes, they'll see a white guy, invite him to a party, and of course the white guy's thinking, oh, these cool black brothers trying to like hang with me, and they would invite the guy to a party, and they would run a train on him, And
hey, excuse me. Wait a minute. I know you're familiar with all of this, but people that are watching, you're making jaws drop at this point.
Making mine drop
That's
too.
what I said. I said, well, how we having this conversation? Because I try, honestly, when some people, if they were not there, because I feel
they
bad
wouldn't
for
understand.
the people who picked up his book and they thought, wow, this is the savior. And they put all their eggs in a basket, like, wow, he's talking about the fallacy of Christmas and Easter and all this stuff like that. When I see
he's enlightening
me,
he's enlightening me.
I don't even bother saying anything because it's like crushing to me. But if it's somebody who's, because I'm like, Dad, they don't know. They're really just ignorant. They don't even know that they traded one religion for another religion. And to me, it's an even deeper religion, because this man is saying, I'm the black person trying to save you from all these white devils and put them in another spell. Because at the end of the day, he didn't give a shit. I mean, when we were, before some of us left, and he sat down, and even some of the things, it's like kind of shocking to hear him say. And he was just like, if he could find a way to get rid of all the people on the land, but still have them supporting him, because like he would get upset when he would have the Nuwaupa Ball selling tickets for $100, but then he's like, the people was creating the Nuwaupa Ball, making the books and all that. He would get pissed off that he would have to have them there without them paying $100 because they lived on the land and we didn't have money. We just worked for free. 24 hours,
24
7 days.
Yeah.
And so really, it's just like it's about sex, it's about control, and he would say that, and it was just shocking to us. And it's like we're numb to it because we're there, we're used to hearing these stories. And he would say like, oh, his people are so stupid. He said if they look at the blue sky and he says that sky is green, they would, wow, look at that green sky. And he would talk shit. When those 19 classes on the land upstate New York, and people pitch their tents and sit out the rain, and we were in his bedroom. He wake up whatever time they're waiting. They're there waiting for the master teacher to come give them some knowledge. He's in his room waking up 10 o'clock in the morning in a robe because he had 5 of us in his bedroom, and he's looking outside the window. It's raining, people's tents are sliding, and he was like, look at them dumbasses. I wouldn't stand out there. He would make jokes about it. So I feel bad sometimes. Like, people talk all this stuff about us. But what is it saying for the person? Like, first of all, he already said he was guilty and then took it back. But what does it say about him that there's people whose souls are relying on him being innocent
to be saved?
And not even that. Like, everything, it's just like, so yeah, he would tell us those stories. He would talk about running trains on people. He told us one story about back in the day, him and some guys, they would like grab women off the street, take them up to the rooftop, and run trains on the woman. And he said one guy, one incident happened that they were running a train. This guy gets up to have sex with this woman, realizes it's his mother, and jumps off her. So now, if he made that up, I don't know why he told us that, but I'm sure you could call 10 of the Banats and they've heard that story because he's told this to us for years. I mean, he is perverse. Like some people would say, he would like putting his penis in his own butthole, and like nasty teacher.
I don't want to get off of that point, but I did want to turn to product.
Yeah.
In some of the videos that you saw, because I remember in the trial notes when you were talking what had happened with you and Eddie and I don't know, I think Issa at the time.
Yeah.
What I mean, really, because this is something that people need to know. Okay, because now they're talking about the whole hormone sexuality and the gatekeepers and the golden children and all this stuff. It seems to be a pattern, and it's all coming together. It's almost as if when he got locked up or whenever he started writing those letters, he started bringing this stuff out more. I mean, he would sit. How did he approach you to want to even have sex with you? I don't. If it's too much to bring, if you don't want to talk about, it, I understand it. But what was his game plan? How did he do that? And not just do that, but bring other kids, not younger kids, into that little sexual. Because from what I understand from Kathy is that there was at a time he would just have the girls that he would have sex with, and then he would have the boys separately. How did he approach you and Salam and Eddie, or even in Issa at the time?
Yeah. Well, like upstate New York is when it started happening to me. So now, like that, I'm actually remembering times where they would take some of the boys and the girls, and we'll like be in a circle, and they're like showing us like our private parts, and like
Mm-hmm.
like trying to teach us about it. Like some of the teenagers at the time, like
Mm-hmm.
that's what they do, and like even making us like now that I'm really recollecting is like things like that used to like happen in small groups. Like they would teach us like, oh, what the body parts are and things like that
Mm-hmm.
in little 4 or 5 groups.
Mm-hmm.
But when it actually happened to me, the approach was I remember being around my birthday, and we one of the girls um one of the girls walked me over to the trailer that he had, and when I came inside of the trailer, there was a cartoon porno on the TV. It was either on or they put it on or whatever. Like I remember seeing that, and the girl that was there started like, touching me, fondling me, like taking my
Mm-hmm.
pants off, and then like I see him on the side, like, because he's there the whole time. So after a while, like after I kind of like um get the feeling like, hey, this is what's going on here. Like some girls
Mm-hmm.
fondling me, like your body's kind of might be getting excited or whatever you're going through at the time, like.
Now
So
these were females. It was females doing this.
yeah, there was always like a female there when I was, when there's always another female there because, even in this house, you'll always have like somebody there, like,
Mhm.
you wouldn't really just be by himself like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then, sometimes the people that be there are, also, a part of it as far as like in that cycle, from, groomed into it. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how he approached me about it. So like I was at the time I was young, I was 7. I was,
Right.
I was young. So like I really like didn't have a context to kind of put it into like and engage it, because he's also my father at the time, and then I have all these brothers, sisters. We have this other life that's not involving molestation, you know what I'm saying? That's just an
Yeah.
everyday life.
Yeah.
I'm a child. Like we're outside playing in the playground, we're doing all these things, and then so um it wasn't like, and then we were actually learning like Hebrew at this time, going from Arabic to learning Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So you got to think that too, that you're learning a whole new language, so your mind is changing. Like it's a lot going on, like concepts and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
you're switching over to a whole new communication form, which is kind of like, I mean, because to this day, like it's hard for me to remember all of the Arabic, Hebrew, and Nuwaupic and all this stuff that I learned
Mm-hmm.
because like when we spoke Arabic and we learned Hebrew, we was relating those words to Arabic, and
Hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
when we moved on and learned another language, we was kind of relating it back to the previous language, relating it back to the Arabic, relating it, so like we learn so much. It's like so it's just a confusing state. So like with the languages, with the just being a child and then not knowing, like I really didn't have like a approach. He just kind of put it on me, like just did it, like he and then through it was like a gradual, he probably a delicate, like like because from that age it was like like it kind of made me introvert, like go inside. Like I didn't really
Yeah.
like know how to handle that, like
Yeah.
what to like yes, I just kept it to myself. Like so even like
Mm-hmm.
as things were going on, like I just didn't talk about it or didn't really come out with it or really bring it out or so then it really wasn't uh, um I don't think he would have had to explain like why he was doing it, like because I was starting to towards the end, you was starting to get to like I was starting to get to like a place where I started avoiding him. I started like doing things not to because whenever he's seen walking or something like that, people want to make sure that they're seen because he
Yeah.
might say hi to you, he
Mm-hmm.
might shake your hand, he might
Yeah.
even give you $1 or something, like who knows, like
Mm-hmm.
like when people want to make sure that they're seen, so some like I used to do
Mm-hmm.
things to avoid that, even to the point where he mentioned it was like, oh, I don't see you anymore, like 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 you're not around and this and that, like sometimes they used to actually call it, because some of the boys used to be hanging out with him or whatever, just
Hmm.
and they're like, hey, where am I at? Where's David at? Somebody go get David or somebody, like, and then they would have to go and get me just to hang out with everybody else that's whatever the guys are doing,
So when they had to go get you to hang out, what the hangout was to have sex?
No, 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 no. Let me make it clear. Like, I mean,
Okay.
so sometimes he'll be like hanging out the office, and then
Okay.
some of the younger boys or some because sometimes it's like if it's a majority of boys or men around him, then the women may not necessarily be right there at that wherever he's at. So it's like sometimes he was around women, sometimes he was around men, like with the guys or with the girls. So like sometimes he'll be with the family, but that'll be more like in the
Mm-hmm.
open and away
I
from
see.
the houses
I
and
see.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like so sometimes he'll be like with the kids my age, like in a non-threatening, whatever. But then hey, where is David at? Like because I should be like hanging out with the kids my age. But really
Mhm.
I'm just trying not to like I know that they're down there, but I'm like not trying to go over there because I'm just trying to do to avoid it. Like
You don't know what the day's gonna bring. You don't know what the day's gonna bring.
yeah,
And as a child, that's a horrible way to live your life because you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to safeguard yourself.
yeah.
You can't even.
Yeah, and a lot of time when the kids will see him, like he'll probably give you candy or he'll give you like whatever, like and they'll be like, oh, I got this from Baba, I got this from Baba, and then like so it makes you want to like see him or like, oh, let me see if I can get one, let me see if I can get sometimes he used to give us $1 or something like, and
Mhm.
as kids you would think that that's a lot of money or something, so we're like, oh, look what Baba gave me, look what he gave us, like, and so like even one time there was some kids, some of us got some fishing rods.
Mhm.
And so like I didn't get a fishing rod, so he like handed him out, whatever the case. But so
Mhm.
I was like, he was like, oh, you wasn't, if you come around more,
If you was
like,
around.
yeah, like hey, you don't be around or whatever. So like so I was like, hey, like so like as I was getting older, I started trying to do things to avoid the situation. But I think that because I was young and because it was like a gradual thing for me, like the impact of it, like just trying to gradually like ease me into it, like that he really didn't have to explain or whatever, like because once it started from the beginning, it just kept that cycle, like it was always was a girl there. Sometimes it'd be another boy, but it was always a girl there, and then like to talk about that too because sometimes there'll be like any one of three other boys that was involved, like when I, that I saw around myself. And sometimes with the one that was the oldest, like, he'll either send them to tell us to, come down there and we'll both go down there. And even eventually to like trying to get them to scout for other, boys that might, like not say something, or that might be, that's like older because they didn't have time to groom them all the way, but that might be still susceptible to being in that circle, like, and, like, I didn't bring nobody per se, but like they try to get me to get um somebody's little brother, like to try to tell him to like, hey, come over and come visit him, and basically like, okay, the next time that we're gonna go down there, that we're gonna bring him down there with us, you know. And even that happened, like, saying we brought, like they like, I want to say we brought, because I was there with the guy, like we brought the somebody else in, and like, you know he got broken in, like, like, so like, I think like for me is like, a lot of things were like, I think because it happened so early on that it was just like, it was easier to just kind of start to cope with it, like, or start to make the mechanism to kind of, function outside of it.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I want to be fair at the same time, and I just want to bring up some questions that people are asking in the chat. One was it. I'm going to start with six. Is Wally was always around him. He didn't see anything. You're talking about Wally, the reason
Yeah.
this is a good question because when we were coming down for classes or to pick up products, we noticed that Wally was no longer around, and we had always seen Wally way, way back, all the way back since the beginning, and all of a sudden he was gone. So
from
so the
upstate New
question
York,
was, huh?
from upstate New York, because at one point they did have a fallout, and then two, he was sent to Georgia to scout the land before he moved up there. So at one point he was sent to Georgia, so that's why he wasn't around.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember. There was something. I'm trying to remember. There was something he got in trouble for.
I can't remember what it was, but I remember they had some type of conflict about something, but I can't remember.
Yeah, they had a conflict.
I can't remember what it was.
And he was sent to Georgia, and he came back. At some point he came around, and he was around because like when we were going upstate New York, he was there. Like he was his right hand man. He was his driver. And so when we did trips from Brooklyn to upstate New York, Wally was with us, and he, when he would have us and basically had us over the summer upstate New York, and we'd go places, Wally was with us.
Yeah, I see. Okay, here's one for you, Ruby. It says, says, so Ruby left the community. She still didn't say anything to the authorities. Just curious. This is from Blacksmith. But I hear that a lot when they talk about your book.
No, I hear that. I hear that a lot too. A lot of people say, "Why didn't you say anything?" But when you're, it's hard when you're brainwashed and you come out. Other people that weren't, they don't understand the mindset that you're in, because even though I left under shocking circumstances, there were times where I wrote to come back because I was so afraid to be in the dunya. I was so afraid to, live out there. And then I was afraid to, I still felt like he gets you into this mode where you still have to protect, that situation. And so you're thinking like, well, and then who do I say it to? I didn't think about even contacting the authorities. That was like it wasn't even a thought. And the only thing that I can attribute it to is being brainwashed. It wasn't even a thought in my mind, which I'm ashamed of, but didn't come to that reality when I found out that he got locked up for child sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
That I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that somebody said something,
Mm-hmm.
and I was surprised that it got to the FBI. I didn't even think, and I really don't have other than being brainwashed. It wasn't that I picked the opportune time to say something, because a lot of people think, oh, like the brother Polite had mentioned, well, how come everybody just says them at the same time, and like it was an orchestrated event. Some people perceive it that way, but I asked myself that question. Why
Mm-hmm.
didn't I think to say something? Why didn't I think? But I wasn't in the right state of mind. I wasn't even thinking on that train of thought. There was so many.
I want to add two things to it, because I do hear that, and a lot of that is just really based on simplistic ignorance. Because,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm actually in therapy for the first time ever in life, and my therapist showed me a lot of things, and when she showed me all these things, it's the same pattern, and people are trained, they're fearful. Nobody wants to be the one to say something. He has the control. I remember being up in Georgia, and he was giving a speech to the brothers, basically calling them punks, because when he was having problems with Sheriff Sills, he said the difference between the Ansar brothers and the New brothers, he didn't have to tell somebody, go handle that. If there was somebody that was a problem in Brooklyn, they would come up gone, dead, in the hospital with broken bones. So whether he said something or not, they were just handled. Where the newer brothers, he used to always talk shit about them, talking about their punks and this is that. Now also, when you have stuff like that, people are living in fear, in shame. Nobody wants to talk about it. You think it's comfortable getting up on stand and someone cross-examining me and saying things like that. People don't want to say nothing. But I do know, years ago, I used to have a YouTube channel that was not connected to my name. And because to me, I'm kind of jaded. Like I've been saying something. I've been on chat groups and this is that. People may not know it's me, but I've been there all along. So when I had a YouTube channel under a different alias, a different name for myself, and I had some of the Montel show and things like that up there, and I would, when people come on there, I would go to bat with each and one of them. And it's just like, by every time I started talking, by the stuff I was saying, either they would think I was a dude, or they were like, oh, who you are, trying to figure out who I am. I also had people messaging me. People started saying, he did this to me too. And I never said anything. One person, this lady, I don't even know who she is, because it's YouTube. People don't sign up with their real name. She sent me a message saying that she moved in Brooklyn with a husband and pregnant, and Doc was trying to get with her, and she was just like blown away. Like, why would he do this? Like, and so when people are faced with that, they don't say anything. The same thing with Bill Cosby, African Bambaataa. People don't want to say anything when it's because who wants to be the one to say, oh, this leader is doing these things? And then
Who's going to believe you?
Exactly.
You don't even know people are going to believe you.
When you say something, then all of a sudden you're oh, you're trying to take down a black leader and all this stuff like that. But it's just like, think for a minute. Like, take away his name, put somebody else's name, take away the victim name, put your kid's name. And how would you read that story? Would you feel the same way if you took out his name? Most people would have to say they can't say that. If that was their child who said, he did this to me, are you going to say your kid's a devil? If it was somebody else that you wasn't fond of because he's supposedly the master teacher, would you say these things? And 9 times out of 10, they would have a whole nother different attitude. And it was interesting how some of them get, mad about the African Bambaataa situation, but they haven't come to grips with the Doc situation. And when the trial happened, and you got a whole bunch of kids, minors, who are saying, oh, in his bedroom, he had this stuffed animal, he had this thing, this is that. And if you have 10 kids describing exactly to the T what this man has in his bedroom, how is
Like the
did they all, you know, how did that come up? You
Yeah,
know,
why
like
would they
that
be
pink
in his bedroom like
like the
that?
Pink
yeah,
Panther doll.
yeah, like the Pink
Yeah.
Panther doll that
Yeah.
his wives gave him as a joke, where they took the tail and cut off the tail and sewed it on like a penis and took some of the hair and sewed it on. He had that
Mm.
doll, but
Yeah.
kids
They put
were
hair on it.
describing,
Oh,
yeah, they you know, because you
Pubic,
know
pubic kid,
they're his
oh Lord.
wives, so they know his perversions, and so they did it
Yeah.
as a gift for him, like way back in the day, as a funny thing. Yeah, they took the tail, they cut a piece of the tail from the Pink Panther and some of the hair, and they made it like a penis. So he had it in his bedroom from Brooklyn to upstate New York to Georgia. So when kids are going on the stand saying, "I seen this Pink Panther doll, I seen this, you know, leopard print blanket," and when the cops who go in and raid and they go and confiscate everything from his bedroom, and what do they find? The Pink Panther doll, this blanket. Like, come on, it doesn't, like, they want to be trapped in this thing. And when someone says something, then all of a sudden it empowers someone else to say, maybe I should say something. Because there's people who came to me and like, you know, I'm so glad you said something. They may not publicly say it, but they're like, oh man, or they're just, and the thing is, with all the people that I know it happened to, unfortunately, there's way more that never said anything because they left, you know, when they were younger or whatever have you, and they're afraid to say something. They don't want to be looked at. So we get the scorn for coming up and saying what happened to us, or we get the scorn with saying, you were there, I saw you, you did this, remember? No, I didn't do this, you know? And so, you know, people say that, but that's also the
They
nature
don't
of trauma
understand.
and abuse. And when you're
Yeah.
talking about being programmed and all that, when I left, I was just like, you know, you know, someone told me, oh, that's a cult. And I'm like, no. I gave the doc answer. No, it's culture. Until someone handed me, no, it's not a cult, it's culture. You know what I mean? That's what I'm programmed to say. You know,
Yeah.
until someone handed me you know, 5 different cult documentaries from different places, and I'm like, wow, this sounds like home. Even when we went on the Dr. Phil show, there was a white family that were also from a cult, some other religious white cult, and I'm sitting there with Max and my brother because it was 2 stories. They went up first, and then we talked afterwards, and I'm sitting there like, damn, this sounds just like the mosque. We're thinking we're in this unique situation, and this plays, it plays to the T cult mentality. You know, when I'm looking at videos where people take, you know, some people, you know, just based on the trauma of it, you know, when you're talking about molestation and all that, and a lot of times it's someone that you know, there's this dynamic that the person doesn't want to say, regardless of if they have fame or whatever have you. The child doesn't want to say because there's, first of all, there's this dynamic of, that's my dad, I love him, but he's doing these things. He's the reason why my butt hurts, but he's my dad, you know, or he's the reason, you know, because even me, people, I wrote to him right there, telling him whatever have you, but still nothing happened. Or where you do say something or it comes out, whatever, and it's just hushed, you know. And, you know, people used to say back in the day, oh, you know, he should have been judged by his community. The community was keeping it going. You know what I mean? Nobody want to talk.
I heard that.
Nobody's gonna say nothing. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
because
you.
it came up. Which parents rallied up and say, you know what, these rumors. I remember in Georgia, because he used to try to tell us how we're misfits and all this stuff like that. We're so fucked up, and he's going to be the only one to help us, whatever. So he called himself giving us therapy class, the Banats. So there was a certain time that we would meet with him, and he would like, oh, talk to him. But it's like, how are you going to talk to him? And he's the real reason you got the problem. But anyway, he would actually tell us to our face. He said, you know, your parents don't love you guys because they know it's, you know, whatever that, you know, they, you know, if there's rumors going on that I'm having sex with the Banats, and someone says, here, raise my daughter, they don't care. They know. So, you know, for the Banats there, we're like, you know, this is what it is. Nobody's going to say anything. But the minute someone starts saying something, then somebody else grows a pair and like, you know what, I want to say something. I'm tired of being quiet. you know, because it doesn't go away. It
It
impacts
doesn't.
in so many parts of your life. It doesn't go away until you finally say something. So when someone else says something, or you know, when someone finally removes themselves so far from that brainwashing that they wake up and say, what were we, you know, like,
What was
did
going
I
on?
really open a door and jump from the front door to the steps because I didn't want to step in sewer water? Like, how is that okay?
Mhm.
How is that
Mhm.
okay with the people living there? How is that okay with our parents knowing that that was going on? How is that okay? And, you know, and that was one of my things when I was like, so, you know, like my mom one time when I, you know, because I wanted to leave, and it was this whole thing. And I was just like, you know, this is supposed to be a religious community. But for me, I was always miserable inside. I was, you know, like, you know, I was suicidal. I was miserable. I didn't know what was going on, why we had to be like, you know, all these little things. And I was just like, how is this supposed to be a holy place? And we're sitting there being miserable. You know, one of the sisters told me, she was a new sister in Lacundia. And she was like, oh, you know, she was like, you guys are so lucky. You guys get to be around Doc all the time. And I was like, your ignorance is lucky. I wish I was just like, oh, you know, like you. But it's just like, you know, I don't have that same because you're right there. You know what I mean? Um,
You're seeing the man. You're seeing the man do what he does, what he did. It's a different experience, and it's like, and I'm thinking about too. I wanted to interject on that. On, you know, Nikki was the person who did and found through that Bill Osinski, the reporter, you know, on the story, and that's how I got back in touch with Nikki. And then that's when she told me, she was like, yeah, you know, there's a trial going on. And I said, I would love to be a witness if they need me, because then I felt, you know, there's a venue, because I just didn't, yeah, you don't think, now some people were very tech savvy, thought about things like that. You know, you're in there and you work on a computer, you're not really on the internet. You're not really, you know, able to really, you got to sneak to get on the private, like a phone to call outside to something. And if you get caught on a telephone trying to call outside, that's a whole nother situation you got to deal with. So it's like you know, you're in a different world. You're just in a closed off, controlled environment.
And
So you still think that way when you leave. You still think, you still under that influence, you know, where you don't even think, it doesn't even occur to you to even think about that kind of thing.
yeah.
So, you know, that took a toll on me, because I wanted to tell Baylor's mother, you know, but I didn't know if it was a test, because he sent, when I was getting put out, because I wanted to leave, so he said he'll take my stuff, you know, because, you know, I had jewelry and stuff. So when you leave, they take your stuff. So I remember writing this letter, and I gave it to the sister named Shua, who worked in the census department. She was the intake. She took the applications and all that stuff, people that were moving in and who was moving here and there to what mosque or whatever, what community or whatever. So I wrote a letter to her, because he wouldn't speak to me at the time. And because I was being labeled a troublemaker at that point, because there was a lot of things that were happening back to back with the, you know, food in one house, the kids are going hungry, I'm over there, you know, demanding for food, you know, speaking out against things. And then that's when I started realizing that something's not right. And then with that, so it was just like a series of things where makes sense. It didn't connect with the man that I thought should be, you know, who's representing the whole community. It didn't connect. I was like, why is he letting this happen? And then, you know, Baylor comes, and I'm like, okay, this is, you know, it was just, I remember thinking, I was so brainwashed. I was thinking, well, if I tell her mother, am I gonna be able to leave? Like, and is she like, is she even gonna believe me, or is she gonna say, oh, she's being a devil, or she's being disagreeable, and she just wants to say this because she's leaving? Because I asked to leave, but then it was like, okay, since you are leaving, since you want to leave, you know, they used the opportunity for the communities. They would come together every Wednesday or something like that. And they
Yeah.
were like, okay, you're going to get on a van going back to New York.
Mm-hmm.
But in between that time, he didn't want to talk to me. And I was kind of like shut off. So, you know, he sent her mother. And I'm like, is this a test? Because that's who I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell her mother. But it was just one of those things where you're like, okay, if you go against him and you say something against him, you don't even know if the person's mother's even going to believe you, because
Yeah.
you know, so I just kept my mouth shut. I just kept my mouth. I
Okay.
told her to look to her daughter, but I didn't go into detail. And,
Mm.
you know,
Okay. Okay. All right. I mean, here's a couple of questions from the chat. One is, what about the Athens dynamic? Did York take his follower? Did he take his favorites to Athens, Georgia, to have sex? Did Dr. York make sisters feel special by taking them to Athens? Anybody
Yeah.
can.
Well, I will answer. Well, let's
I
try
was
to go
going
back.
before Athens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just the same thing. Like, you know, in Brooklyn, how he started separating people, then he started, you know, moving with certain groups, small groups of people. Then he eventually moved to upstate New York. And then as he needed people, because he was always trying to downsize the central community, because every other community, they sold books, they brought the money, they gave it to him. There was even a culture where he started having them, when people started finding out he liked the big bills, so they would bring all these big bills trying to impress him, and he would take them off the top, and then the office is left to try to pay the bills with all the small bills. So they're like, please just, you know, send the money. So the same way how he was in Brooklyn going upstate taking small groups, and then when he moved to upstate New York, he started taking small groups to Georgia, and then he moved to Georgia, he was trying to do that to Athens. So when he started, you know, because, and then he
And he was
also, he
putting
would
people
his
out
little,
as he went. He was
yeah,
he put people
he
out.
would put
Yeah.
people out. He would try, like, he would sometimes tell some of the Banats, one of the things that he used to have a problem with us, because he used to tell us that he wanted us to replace his wives. So he would try to get us to say, work with Amina, work with this one, learn what they're doing, because you know, they're too old. Like, there was a time where Nejla, it was like crazy when I think about it. She's 18 and she's freaking out because she feels, oh my God, I'm old. He's going to give me to one of the brothers. And she was freaking out about it, you know,
Yeah.
because that's just how it was. You know, it's just like, you know, and then when it came out that she had said something, whatever have you. But he started going to Athens, and he, you know, because he likes little he likes little places to go off to. Like, a lot of times when he had proper, you know, things built, he always had the brothers build a little secret cubby hole in a secret area that he would go into, and he start bringing people around and having sex parties there, and this is that, and come out
Where
and
wa-
be to
where
him for
where was
hours.
where was one of those holes built?
Well, like, he had one when like in Georgia, he had one of the trailers, then he got a bus, and then like
Oh, the
when he was
Zimmer.
having, huh?
The Zimmer.
Yeah, the Zimmer, because he would go
Okay.
in there and hang out, and he would just have call whoever he want. There would be one or two people there that day who made his, you know, tea and his food and served him. And basically, if he wanted to see somebody, he'll tell them, call this person, call that person. They'll call, oh, Doc wants you to come to the place, and you had to go and do whatever that he wanted you to do, or just hang out until he's going to have sex with you and tell you the next day, okay, it's time to go home. You know, or you think you're in the house by yourself and the lights go off and you feel other hands. It's like, all day I
Oh.
saw me and him, and now the lights are off, and now I feel other sets of hands that I don't know whose hands it is. And when you wake up, there's still nobody there. So, you know, and he would have people hiding. When he would build the build up different buildings, he would take some of us to do the walkthrough and check on the buildings, and he would, you know, and it's dark, he has his little flashlight, and he would sit there in the building that was being constructed and having people giving him blowjobs and having anal sex and stuff like that, and then going out or he would have like little spots where as he's building that he would just kind of take over, or even how he built the house and there was like this separation to it. So when he was in Athens and he started, he got the property in Athens, he started going back and forth. And so he had his little set of people that there was a publications office, but then now this special publications office, they were working on, what's that? It was supposed to be the replacing the Sons of the Green Light. It's like a,
the Sufis, the place in the Sufi. Is that way? That's a long time ago. But I don't know.
AEO.
It wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna pull out my certificate. I actually still have that crap. Sorry, not. I know some people feel for it or something, whatever.
Egyptian order.
But, yes, which was a bunch of plagiarized things, like half of the religion. But he had the people in Athens. They were working on because is it Fatima? I think was one of his wives. Her father was some form of Black Mason or whatever have you. So he, as an honor to him,
I think he was in a nation or something. Yeah.
No, but but not just a nation. He was some form of Masonic thing because
something.
He was missing books that's supposed to be secret.
Okay,
thing.
You're talking about Shamila Rich's father.
Yeah.
That'd be Prince York's mother.
Yeah.
Quincy Richardson.
So he would have, he gave him, because that's what some people did too, to get in his best honor, they want to try to give him stuff. So sometimes people will see a book and they'll be like, oh man, give it to Pops. And he would take that book, give it to one of us to read, and said, oh, tell me about it. Okay, you type it. Okay, you add something, blah, blah, blah. The book produced. And when somebody says, hey, this sounds like a book that's such and such, oh no, the white man stole my stuff. And then we weren't allowed to read nobody else's books. There's another form of this, brainwashing of where you're only getting information from him. There's a whole shelf of books about the occult, Masonic lodges that from Brooklyn, he would have trouble with the Masons because he would get his hands on some of their stuff, put it in the doctrine, and when they saw it, they wanted to threaten him, sue him, whatever, and then he would have to change it up. He had us. I used to work in Athens with him, quite a few times, and he took the thing, had to scan it, the cover, make changes to it, and he put it out as the AEO stuff. One of the Masons get a hand of it, and they sent him a letter that they were going to take him to court unless they sent him a cease and desist letter. And then so they come back and he's like, y'all got to make this look way different than it is now, and we have to change up all these things and send it to print. So when he started going to Athens, so what he would do is sometimes when he wanted to get away, he would take people, whether they were, the women that were working on the books, some of the boys and the girls that were there, and he would take them to Athens and have them there for a few days. People, sometimes there was like a little bus or minivan. Sometimes we were like so squished in that minivan, it's like 15 people trying to fit in an 8-car that people like literally had to lay on someone else because there was not enough space and drive from Georgia to Athens like it's some type of slave ship because he's like, oh, he would send the list. These are the lists of the people coming to Athens. And they would come to the office and say, okay, when we call your name, get ready, you're going to Athens. And they, call out the list. They have the driver. You go to thing. You are in Athens, and you're in Athens for however long he wants to keep you there, or for however long you keep out of trouble. And if you're in trouble, he sends you back down. He punishes you. You can't come back to Athens. He has somebody in your place. Or like one time he was mad at me, so he brought my mom up there. And he did all type of little weird, psychological things like that.
Games. Yes. Yeah. He did that when, like you said, the process. Yeah.
So he had Athens. He would go there. Then he tried to cut off people from Georgia and send a message saying that he didn't want to pay the bills on the land that people which was unprecedented. He told people that they had to go get jobs and take their check and give it to the office so that, take out whatever they need for transportation to have somebody take them to their job, but basically have a job, give the check to the office so the office could use that to pay the bills because he said he wasn't going to pay the bills on the land anymore. he would make money from it, and he would say, well, these products, if they sell these special products, like all the new products, that money would go straight to Athens. But the people in Edenton couldn't sell those products or benefit from it. So he started just like sucking out the blood from, Edenton. And, and it was just like they're struggling to keep the bills paid and keep the lights on and things like that, because he started just pulling away. So he did take people to Athens, and he took kids, he took girls, he took, people working there, and he would have small groups, anywhere from 8 to 20 people, and some people would stay there for long periods, weeks, some of them months, and some of them they'll just, if it was a big project and they need a lot of people, so they'll bring more people, got a bus one time, people in, did the project, bus them back.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say something real quick, because I actually been to Athens as well, and because a lot of the men couldn't go, like particularly go inside the house.
Right.
In particular, so then they would have some of the boys come up there, because they have some like IKEA style furniture, like desktops and stuff, to set up the office. So we'll have to go in there and like set up the desk and all this stuff where the men couldn't go in. They'll have the boys do that. And also we'll clean, because he had a pool. So we'll like clean the pools, we'll like, rake the yard and stuff like that. We'll do chores like that. And then also that on the property, which he didn't have a permit for, he started building like a let's call it a tree house. But he started building like a place on his property, and it was like a multi-floor, like maybe 2 or 3 floors, like a little guest house type of thing, like a little away place where you have, like a game room type of place. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I helped like build it from the ground, like, so I would go out there to work on that and to like do the chores and certain chores. I wasn't in Athens all the time, but enough to be there to to do those things, and even to from the concrete that they was putting down on the little side mini house that they was building, like a little place to go to away from, because the house in Athens was an actual house. So it has like rooms and hallways and stuff like that. So, he was building something on the same property, like away from, separate from the house itself. So maybe he can go to, so, like, and it was like, I think we completed it for the, or mostly completed with like a mini fridge and a flat, maybe, whatever TV and a couch and, marble floors and stuff like that. Like, because he couldn't bring or any brother up there, all the brothers up there. It was just a certain ones that he brought up there to build that and to do the, the manual labor and stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
So I've been to Athens as well.
Yeah. So. Okay. One of the because there's a couple of more questions that definitely want to put up, but one of the biggest rants that his followers like to put out is this thing with South Beach, Jacob York, and the conspiracy. Now, because Nikki, your name was brought into this thing with being some kind of a part of a conspiracy, what took place in South Beach?
South Beach was funny. The irony of it is the one person that was actually trying to, get frisky there is the one person that made up a whole bunch of stuff. So when we left, people like Habiba and me and stuff like that, we didn't leave all at the same time, but there was a period that quite a few of us who's always been around left, and he was literally like, having a heart attack about it. Some of the girls went back to see him, and he's like, oh, where's Ada? Where's this person? And I'm like, I left. I'm not going back. But anyway, I bumped into Jacob. Me and him used to be friends, and also we grew up as brothers and sisters. But, I bumped into him in Georgia. We started like, wow, I haven't seen you in years, blah, blah, blah. We started hanging out. A few of us would hang out. He was helping a few people who, because a lot of, when we left, we didn't have nothing. I literally had an ID and the clothes on my back and some bins of books. Half of it was like books that my dad was like, oh no, throw that shit out. So when we're seeing each other, you know, some of the boys and some of the girls we haven't seen in years, and we're like getting nostalgic about, oh, remember Brooklyn and this is that, whatever have you. So someone came up with the idea, like, you know, we should get together, we should do something, we have, you know, whatever have you, you know, because we haven't, some of us, we haven't seen people in 5+ years. And, you know, when in Brooklyn, we did everything together. We prayed
Like
together.
family.
We played together. We ate together. We shared clothes together. Sometimes, when you, depending on your age, you bathed together. So we were very close based on how we were raised. And so when he started breaking off from Brooklyn to upstate New York, and then he changed religions and told people to get out the veil, which made a divide, because like you spent 30 years telling people they need to be in a veil, and now you're telling people to take the veil off. Some people bugged out. So he had a lot of drop-offs from there. So a lot of those mu'minuns and mu'minatis that left is because their moms took them when they were like, what do you mean we're not Muslim anymore? What do you mean you want me to take off the veil? You know, after, you know, we've become to feel it so sacred. So a few of us, you know, it was one of the holidays and stuff like that. We were still like so fresh and green out the mosque and things like that. We were like, oh, this is a really great idea. Let's try to do it. You know, most of us didn't have any money because, again, we were straight from the mosque. So we were trying to chip in our money together. We rented we secured a couple of hotel rooms. And so there was a couple rooms for the guys, there was a couple rooms for the girls, and we went to South Beach for the weekend. It was like Memorial Day weekend, one of those holiday weekends, and, you know, because we were all just really catching up. You know, some of the things, I mean, part of the trip was really emotional, because when Jacob and Shahid, you know, Rashid, you know, some of them were telling us how, you know, when Doc left Brooklyn, and basically, you know, like sucked everything from Brooklyn and went upstate. And a lot of those boys, when they wind up leaving, and they were sharing with us, like, how they had nothing. Like, how they would have to, like, try to steal to eat because they were just basically on the streets, living in abandoned buildings, living in bathtubs because they didn't have no place to lay their head. And we're like, wow, we had no idea this is going on. And then we're telling them some of the stuff that's happening to us. So we were like sharing different types of pains of, like, a lot of the boys, when they're born and or raised in the community, they don't know the outside world. So it was devastating for them to be in the outside world. They, you know, some of them got kicked out or whatever reason, you know, or put out, you know, as a term of punishment or whatever have you, and they're on the streets, living on the streets after being raised, being so sheltered. So it was a lot of those conversations, like, wow, some of them didn't understand, like, why couldn't you guys leave? And we're like, we didn't know we had a choice. We didn't know we could leave. You know, we just, that's just how it was. So we came to South Beach, and the irony, one of Layla's younger sisters from another mother, whatever, Farah, she would be around. Now, she was, I think, 16 or 17 at the time, and Jacob actually used to, like, watch over her like a little sister. And he would have her come around, you know, because where he was at in Atlanta, a lot of us was really close, so sometimes people would go hang out at his place. He was helping people get jobs. I remember he sat down and he was like, do you have a resume? And I'm like, what's a resume? You know, he sat down and helped me put together a resume and helped me get my first real job. I think when I came out, I was at this telemarketing thing that I couldn't do, wind up, but my first real job at FedEx, Jacob helped me get that job. You know, he was helping people, you know, Karima, some of them people. You know, I went out and I found my real father, who happened to be in Atlanta. He actually helped me rescue my sister from the place. But he was like, you have to live with me. And he was living with his sister. So I lived with my dad. But there was a lot of people, they didn't have nowhere to go. So some people who didn't have anywhere to go, Jacob let them stay there at his place because he was renting some house in Stone Mountain. And he had lots of rooms. And he was like, look, you guys are like family. I don't care. If you want to find a bed or whatever, catch up there, you know. And so that's how it was. And a lot of us, you know, we're just like, Dad, we miss our brothers, we miss our, you know, our other people that we were raised with. So
Yeah.
The
we went down.
familiarity
There was
too.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. So there was like 2 or 3 cars. I think I was with the car. I was with Lemuel's car. We went the next day. For whatever reason, I couldn't go with everybody else. We drove down to Miami, South Beach. We stayed at some hotel. Don't remember the name of the hotel. You know, and we just hung out. We went to some clubs. I mean, we're all young. We're like, I think the youngest person was like Pharaoh somebody, and the funny thing is that Farah had a crush on one of the boys, Rashid, who was like our age and stuff, and she's like a little teeny bopper, and he was like, you know, don't even go there, like, you know, like, because, you know, with some kids, you know, some teens and whatever have you, they got a crush on somebody, they had to try, they kept trying, she kept trying to be a flirty, and it wasn't that type of vibe. It was that type of vibe of, wow, you guys went through what? Wow, you guys went through what? You know, like, you know, it was one of those type of trips. So, and it wasn't a trip where it was like, we didn't even have co-ed things. The girls were, you know, the girls had 1 or 2 rooms that they was all sharing in bed. The boys had 1 or 2 rooms that they was all sharing. So now we're just having fun, checking out some parties, going to the beach, whatever have you, catching up. And one morning, you know, being silly, we wake up, go knock on other people's bed. You know, they're not up. We're, you know, not being silly. People taking pictures because we haven't seen each other in years. We're out on South Beach. We're having fun. We're having a good time. People taking pictures. So, and the funny thing is, because I remember the incident where Jacob had to tell her, like, look, chill, because she was flirting so hard with Rashid. But it wasn't no type of vibe of people hooking up or this is that, whatever have you. It was no, you know, and people, I mean, the drive back, people was crying because it was just like, you know, I can't, you know, they were just, we were shocked how a lot of the boys were living after they left the community in such devastation. And they were shocked at some of the things that we were living through. And they were just like, I can't even wrap my head around it, you know? And so when the trial comes up, it come to find out people are like, oh, look at these pictures. And it's just like one of those things where, you know, some of us was up before the other people, so we went and banged down the door, jumped on the bed, like, hey, wake up, being silly. Somebody's taking a picture, and it was like, oh, yeah, see, there's stuff going on, because there, you know, it's like, it wasn't even like that, you know? So for whatever reason, Farah at some point turned this ultra Nuwaupian, which she wasn't even, you know, like her dad left years ago. She wasn't in the community with us, but she started, you know, when the case was being built and all that, and they were like recruiting people, and they got to her, and all of a sudden she started shaving her hair and wearing a minty braid. She wasn't wearing those things before, you know. So she made up these things that collaborated with what they were saying, which they told us they was going to do. Because when the wind started picking up that there was an investigation going, they were trying to figure out who's involved and this is that. I remember Leah, one of Doc's daughter, you know, was it Leah? One of those.
Which one?
I think it was Leah.
Yeah, it was Leah.
Okay.
So she called me, and she was even trying to insinuate, like, why are you saying these things? Is it because you didn't really feel like family? Is it because of, you know, Med-E? Because, you know, my sister has Down syndrome. And when Doc found out that my mom, who was 6 months pregnant and finally going to the pediatrician, you know, which the state could have taken her baby, they found out she had Down syndrome. So when it got back to him, he sent a message to my mother saying that she had to have an abortion. And so, which we didn't
he disown her too? He wouldn't claim her.
Because
he wouldn't claim her.
But at first he was just like trying to tell her she has to have an abortion, and he was saying, you know, people look up to him like a god. So how is it that he's going to have a child that's less than perfect? Now, mind you, she's not the only one that got a problem. He's got a kid that's a ward of the Florida state that has dwarfism and a whole bunch of other stuff going on, that he would get mad if someone sent up a picture. He'd be like, why did you show me that picture? He didn't want nothing to do with that child. So He even threatened my mom to send her back to Panama, and she was like, I haven't been to Panama since I was a teenager. What am I going to do in Panama? Where am I going to go? So Lee was trying to ask me, oh, is it because of Medi? Because, you know, and then my mom, she inquired, she had to, and they're like, you can't have an abortion at 6 months. There's nothing, they said that child is perfectly healthy. She just have an extra chromosome. She doesn't have any of the heart problems. A lot of the kids who have Down syndrome she don't have anything but an extra chromosome. So there was no medical reason for her to terminate that baby. So then the threat was, don't tell anybody that that's my kid. You know, and he didn't want to see her when she got home from the hospital. Nobody wanted to go with her when she, you know, was having her baby. She asked me. I didn't want to go with her because I'm like, you know, I'm in that brain where I'm like, I'm not getting in trouble, you know.
Yeah, I'm getting in trouble.
I'm not thinking my mom needs somebody to go. I'm just like, I'm not going to the hospital because I'm going to be in trouble. And I don't feel like try to figure out how to get out of trouble. So she went to the hospital by herself, had the baby, and he was just like, I don't want to see her. Don't tell anybody she's my kid, and all those things. So, which is ironic when he sent a message.
Yeah, mother told me about that.
Talking about, oh, I want to see, you know, I miss Medi. What, you this older before she was born? So when she called me on my cell phone. I don't know how she got my number, but you know, I said, look. And she was talking about Amala and what we were saying and this and that. And I said, I'm not the one lying here. I'm just saying what happened. I'm telling the truth. And she basically told me, she said, well, you know, if your sister gets up and testify, we have 20 people that's going to get up. For each person that gets up, we got 20 people that's going to say they're lying. And I was like, you know what? I do not care, because you're not going to tell me that I didn't see what I saw with my own eyes. You're not going to tell me what didn't happen, what happened to me. You're not going to tell me what I know for a fact happened to my sister, because sometimes I was there and my sister and Belora was there, you know? So I told her, I don't care, because she was, you know, trying to like get me out of it. And I said, I don't care if it's 100 people to say my sister's lying or to say I'm lying. I'm going to say the truth. It has nothing to do with family. It has nothing to do with Medi. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It's just, I'm going to say the truth. And so, you know, those are the type of threats that, you know, people would have and try to say, oh, you know, trying to bribe you. Oh, don't you want anything? Don't you need? No. How about him telling the truth? If he cared anything for the children that he raised, because it would be really hard pressed for him to say he didn't raise me. I was always around him since I was 13. You know, with the exception of when he tried to put me with that guy. And even when he was with that guy, I was still around him because that was required of me, you know? So these are the children that he personally hand raised that are saying these things, you know?
Wow. That answers that. That clears that up. I hope they got it. There's two more. One, Nikki, someone was asking was, well, there's actually two. One was, were you really paralyzed at the point? Were you paralyzed at one point from not being fed? And another one was anyone worried about was anyone worried about STDs with the sisters?
Nobody really thought of it.
Nobody thought about that.
Nobody was going to the hospital. Nobody, you know, like I actually have an art piece, one of my pieces that I made a few years ago, that was speaking of child molestation within religious cults and communities and organizations. You know, is titled Homegrown, because he used to tease, one of his nicknames for us was Homegrown Pussy, you know? So his thing is, he felt like he didn't have to worry about nothing because we're only with him, you know? And he's not talking about anything he has or anything like that. So there was no concept of that. I mean, there was like a nurse on the land, like if there was something wrong, you know? But if nobody knows, like there's nobody going to the doctors. Like I heard one of the ignorant posts like, oh, tell Tadic to produce a medical record. Nobody was going to the doctor. I mean, if you was pregnant and about to deliver that baby, you would go, and they would have to tell all these type of phony excuses of why they didn't go to the regular doctor checkups. But yeah, when I was like, when I was between 17 and 18, I went through this period that I started becoming numb. Like I would go numb from my knees down. You know, it started where from that my knees down, like I just collapsed, and you know, and I was kind of embarrassed. I was like, oh shit, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stand up, and it would happen, and then it would go away. You know, and I didn't want to make a big thing about it because the thing is, Doc doesn't like sickly people around him. So I wasn't trying to have any excuse. I wasn't even thinking, isn't that odd that you just collapse from not being able to stand on your own 2 feet? I was thinking, I don't want to go to the hospital. You know, he's going to put me out. So it would go numb. I remember one time walking to go to work, and I was going down a hill, and my legs just gave up on me. And so I scooted my way to the tree, and someone passed me, and they, oh, you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And then they came back a little later, like, you seem to be in the same spot. And then I had to say, like, oh, I can't move. And so what they did is they brought one of the chairs with the wheels and put me on the chair and wheeled me to the office. So, like, nobody sent me to the hospital. Nobody said what was wrong, any of those things. I didn't really think of anything. I was just like, I don't have to go to the hospital. So there would be times where I would just, like, it would happen for either a couple of hours or a couple of days or one time a couple of weeks, and then I would get back the feeling in my leg. There was even a time where, because I did a lot of stuff online, I was laying out the books, I was drawing the pictures, I was doing the T-shirts when he was mad at your ad, and he was just like, I want you to do it, I'm taking him out. I was painting all these little sarcophagus and things like that, when he was building up his little Egypt of the West thing, and, I'm like, oh, you're the artist? You can't tell him, no, you don't know how to do it, you got to figure it out. So he started doing, when he would travel, he would buy these fiberglass, like sarcophagus and things like that, and then I had to make it black looking, so put putty on the nose and paint it and do all these things, and just make it beautiful. And one of the times that I could not walk, it wasn't even send her to the doctor. He had them, because one of the studio that he had, and it was like an enclosed space, it wasn't even a large space. He told them to get 2 rolling chairs, put me in the rolling chairs, roll the chairs to the sarcophagus, set up the paints, and put the sarcophagus so I could paint. So even though I was paralyzed from the waist down, I was still doing my work.
Wow,
and spray painting, no ventilation, any of these things. I'm in there half paralyzed and just like, okay. And I didn't think nothing of it because I'm just like, he said do this, I'm doing that. So it went on for a while. And then one time where what happened is we had bunk beds at one time in 103. So I'm on the lower bunk bed, and I woke up really early in the morning, and I was numb, because sometimes the numbness will go up and, it would get itchy because we can't move. It's just, your skin and everything starts to itch. So I woke up one morning, and I couldn't move, and I was just hoping that it would go away because sometimes it would, but it kept getting further and further up. So I couldn't even move my hand. So I tried to, because I still had some feeling in one hand, so I tried to pull myself up, and I fell on the floor. So I tried to like roll myself to the bed to try to pull myself up, but I couldn't get up. So after some hours, and people started waking up and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, what you doing? First I tried to play it off again, because again, my thought was, I don't want to seem like there's something wrong with me. So they finally had to tell somebody that I can't move. So they lifted me up, put me on the bed, whatever have you. Someone gave me a stick because like my legs started to itch because like I hadn't moved it in some hours. And I had to have been 18 at that time because my mom was pregnant with Zoraya. So, you know, they didn't know what was wrong. You know, so at some point after like half the day went by, and they said that, you know, someone says she needs to go to the hospital. So at that point, you know, and I'm thinking, like, what was I thinking? Because I started to cry to my mom. I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital because I thought he was going to kick me out and send me to Atlanta if I went to the hospital. Because there was already an incident where I passed out, you know, because I was like working like a mad horse and I was bleeding for over a month, and I literally blanked out, you know. And the doctor, you know, one of the nurse, she wasn't a real doctor, but she was someone that was interested in medical things. So in the land, she was a nurse. People went to her, and she was kind of new, and she was like, you got to go to the hospital. And I was just like, I'm not in the circle that goes to the hospital. Even in the outer circle of people who could go, I'm like on the inside. We don't go to the hospital, you know. And so she had to tell me, there was an incident where she had to tell me, you have to go to the hospital. It's not normal for you to bleed for over a month and you blanked out, like you faded out and passed out on your whatever you were painting. So I had to call him because it was, you know, some sisters, when they had to go to the hospital, they tell the office. But because of the caste system and me being in the inner circle, I don't go to tell the office and ask the office for permission. I have to ask him directly. So I called him, and I wasn't even owning it. I was like, well, this sister says I have to go to the hospital because I'm bleeding. And he was just like, well, you could go if you want to, like a threat, you know. And I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital.
He used to do that.
So, you know, like, oh, you could go if you want to. And I already knew what that meant. So now when I'm like numb, and I started, like, it felt like there was pressure here. And so it was starting to affect my breathing. Like I was like having to force myself to breathe. So my mom was like, you have to go to the hospital. And I just broke down crying because I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital. He's going to kick me out. You know, there was no old people there. There were no sickly people there. There were no fat people there. You know, any of those categories, he would ship them somewhere else, you know? Because he wanted a certain amount of people around him. He wanted, you know, he would always say, like, yeah, the people here are the best of the community. They're the better looking. They're cream of the crop or whatever have you. And we're not fat like some of the sisters out
even
there.
the age group, like some of the older
There's
wives,
maybe one or two old people.
He put
the
them
rest
out.
of them, yeah. So that was my concern. And my mom, who was like 8 months pregnant with my son, she had to throw me over her shoulder and carry me and they put a chair in the shower because, like, you know, I woke up that way, so I didn't bathe and everything. They're like, at this point, everybody's like, you have to go to the hospital. So I'm busy crying, trying to beg my mother not to send me there. She lifts me up, carries me down the stairs with her pregnant 8-month belly, puts me in the chair in the shower so she could bathe me so I could get ready to go to the hospital. So they take me to this clinic, and the doctor at the clinic had said that what it seemed like was happening was something they saw with like big people. So they said, well, we have to do this test where they inject the veins with this blue fluid so they could take an x-ray to see what's going on. But the problem was the symptoms that they thought I had, they were having a problem because I was so skinny. When I was like 25 and like 109 pounds on a wet day. But the problem was they were having a problem finding my vein because I was so skinny. And they said usually when they have that problem with people, because they're overweight, it's easy for them to put the fluid in that vein and do their x-ray. So they did that. They still didn't see anything. And at some point, the doctor said, I have to go to the emergency room because I didn't know, like, the reason why I was having trouble breathing is because my heart was slowing down. So they said they called the ambulance, to pick me up from the clinic and take me to intensive care. So when I got to intensive care, and they put me up to all these heart monitors and all this stuff. So they were trying to figure out what was going on. So they're trying, they're trying to diagnose me, and they don't know, and it's just like the numbness is steadily creeping up, and I'm having harder and harder trying to breathe. Yeah. So they put these when you have when they do the test where they like hit a nerve and your leg jumps up. Right. So they were trying to get a response
reflex
from me. So yeah, so when they wasn't getting any reflex from my legs and my hand, they put these electronic things on my fingers, and they were giving me low-grade electric shocks to see what's going to make me move. So they kept turning up the intensity of it. I was crying because I was feeling the pain, but I was not moving. So then they had diagnosed that they thought that I had this disease called Guillain-Barré. So they told my mom that they had to do this procedure. So I don't know if you see the scar. I have this scar right here, a keloid. So what they told my mom that they, because they were like, her heart rate's dropping. She's not responding to the, they was giving me all this electric shock. I'm crying, snotty nose, everything, but I couldn't. I wasn't. My hand wasn't moving. The only thing that was moving was from here. I could blink. I could talk, but I wasn't trying to talk a lot because I was having problems breathing. So they told my mom that they had to do this procedure where they had to cut a hole in my chest, put a tube from here to my heart, and what they told her that they had to do is take out all of the blood out of my body, put it into some machine that's going to separate the red and the white blood cells, clean it, and put it back in my body. And so, my mom's there. She's calling the office and telling them, they're relaying all these messages. And so at the time, there was a doctor who was an actual doctor, but he was a Nuwaupian, Dr. Thompson, dark-skinned guy, whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they're relaying all these messages back and forth, whatever have you. And so they're saying, oh, she has this disease called Guillain-Barré. We're going to have to do this procedure, clean her blood, all this stuff like that. So, and they have a heart monitor on me because, it was going in. So they wind up, out of desperation, calling him. At the time, he was in Washington. So they told him the symptoms that I was having. And so he told them, did anyone check her potassium? So
thank goodness he said something, even good for something.
So the office called my mom and said, did anyone check the potassium? So she told the doctor, and they checked my potassium level. So at that point, that's when they, told me, because they when they checked my potassium level, it was like a 1.2. So then now the doctors in the place were shocked because they said, your potassium, it goes from 1 to 5, and I guess the potassium is what makes it controls your muscles, and your heart is a muscle. So because I was so low in potassium, my heart was slowing down, and so they immediately, because when you give lethal injection, they said it's actually potassium that they pour in you, and it speeds up the heart, make it bust inside, whatever have you. So now they were prepping me for surgery. I already had this tube inside of me, and right before they checked my potassium, and they said they've had people in the hospital that's died when their potassium level reached a 2. So now the doctors are like, so yours is a 1.2 and you're alive. So now the doctor's like, oh my gosh. So when they found out it was definitely potassium, and my mom, she told them, yes, it was potassium, they wind up putting this little tiny IV into this big tube to give me potassium, and I started, getting back the feeling. And so I guess they was afraid that they were going to question why my potassium level was so low. So the office told my mom, to tell me. Now, mind you, they're prepping me for some surgery. They're telling me my heart rate. I'm hearing my heart rate going slow and all this. It was very traumatic for me. But they told my mom to make sure that I know if anybody asks me about, if I ate, to tell them that sometimes I get so busy that I forget to eat. They didn't want it coming back that
oh my goodness.
I was malnourished and they could have did
that
something, So they gave me potassium. I was in intensive care for about a week. They tried to tell me that I would have to take potassium for the rest of my life and all that. And they were like, they gave me this diet thing. They're like, you have to have bananas, you have to have raisins, this is that. Anytime you feel, something, you have to check it, because they said if your potassium level gets too low, you could die from that. Wow. So
that's true.
Yeah, so they gave me a potassium drip enough so I could, my heart picked up, my feeling came back up. They gave me a prescription for potassium, and they also gave me a meal plan. So I had to give it to the office, and the meal plan, they followed it for like a few weeks or so, and then they were like, well, you can't be doing this, like we can't support that. So eventually, I went from having a certain diet that the doctor said I needed to make sure I had enough potassium to live, to well, if you feel these feelings, we'll get you some bananas, but we can't keep giving you this special diet. So
that's
and it happened another time. Like after that time, there was one more incident where my potassium level got low and I had to be taken to the hospital. But because we already knew there was a potassium thing, they told them to check my potassium. It was my potassium, and they gave me potassium. I stayed in the hospital a couple of days, and I went back.
Okay. Wow.
Just imagine if you had, God forbid, passed.
Yeah.
Nobody would have ever known the real deal. Nobody would have ever known.
The doctor from the clinic that I was taken to at first, when they got the ambulance, they said if I came in there 30 minutes later, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was,
So, okay. Wow. I mean, we can literally go all night, and I know you can, Nikki. I love talking to you, but
I know.
Because we're gonna have to kind of wind this down now. Any closing words? Because I mean, what's been brought out tonight is so painful to hear, and because I read, a lot of the trial notes, transcripts, etc. I mean, it's like being in at the trial again, because it's so vivid, the narrative of what took place, what he did to so many people, and how the followers now can care less, and all they intend to do is just get him out. Why? I do not know, because there's no redeeming quality that this person could possibly bring to humanity from what he's already done, the damage he's done for it, the majority of his own life. But
it outweighs anything. Yeah, it outweighs anything that you can say. Because everybody has that argument. The supporters, they still say, "Well, look at all the good he did."
What good?
Look at all. Yeah.
The plagiarized religion that they have.
Exactly. What they've been enlightened. This is just what I hear a lot of people saying to me. In terms of, oh, well, look at all the good he did. Okay, but he may have enlightened you. I got enlightened by the information. However, what he did, whatever it could have been, I'll put it like this. Whatever the it could have been, it was supposed to be for of and by the children, for of and by each other. We were supposed to have the children in the best position to be untainted by the dunya and the beast. Took them out of the belly of the beast, and all of this stuff.
And made it exclusive to him.
Yeah. So it's like, he's responsible for messing up a whole generation of people. I
Yeah.
mean, on so many different levels, it's just like, okay, that's devastation. You know, it and people need to understand that's who they're following.
And I
That's
see,
who they're following.
I'm watching these kids that are outgoing and getting petitions. People have no clue on this guy York, and they're seeking petitions, or they'll tease people with captions to join or go to that petition site. And in order for them to see what it is they have to see, they have to sign in. Thus, you're signing the petition as if you're willingly going there to sign, but your curiosity has brought you there. That's the kind of deception that this organization breeds, and well, look where it's coming from.
Mhm.
And I just it blows me away that at this point, what possible redeeming quality can this person bring from all the mayhem and debauchery that he has brought to so many people?
If he apologizes and if he says he did it, if he says to his congregation and releases it like he releases all the other little statements, then that would be a smidgen of a redeeming quality, because I can't see it. I can't see it.
Well,
I can't see it. You know,
well,
yeah, I don't see
think
it.
about, well, now
Mhm.
if he were to apologize for the crimes that he committed on a lot of the young people and the children or younger, then his whole program is destroyed, because it was all for years he denied, 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 denied.
Mhm.
Well, I think also too that he didn't always deny. The first was he pled guilty. He withdrew the guilty plea when the
Mhm.
judge said, there's no way that I'm going to give you the minimum sentence when there's people who did less heinous things and they have way more time than you. And that's when he withdrew the guilty plea.
Well,
And
actually, the guilty plea. Well, no, the judge rejected the guilty plea.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But first he said that he was guilty. He
Yeah,
said
he pled guilty.
nobody. They asked him, "Are you under duress? Did anybody promise you
Yeah, that
anything?
was the
Did
state
anybody
case.
these things?" So before he went on this campaign of "I'm innocent," he originally pled guilty to it because
Right.
he thought
I
he was
saw
going to
that.
get the minimum sentence. When he
And,
rejected it, it was going to give him the maximum. Then everything changed.
yeah,
And the
and
thing
I
is, go
go ahead.
ahead.
Go, no, no, you go.
No, I just think, the thing is, people really have to want to, because like, you've been telling me, oh, come on, whatever have you. And first of all, I've always said what I'm saying. I've never
Hmm.
changed.
Hmm.
I don't go to no places because,
Nope.
people are uncomfortable when I'm there. I've been told, hey, can you not come
Mhm.
here because you're going to make, and I'm like, wow, I'm sitting here telling the truth, but people are uncomfortable by me. So I can't, and some people have the luxury of blending back in and pretending like they didn't testify or whatever, or they know the truth. There's people, like I've talked to Ish, he
Mhm.
personally told me his father because he called me and he was like,
Mhm.
oh, you think I knew all these things? I'm like, well, you were also given a 15-year-old wife that you got a kid by, but whatever.
Oh.
That
Maybe,
he has, that
but
he has a
yeah,
wife,
but he
that he has a
told
kid
me.
with same child, with same girl.
Yes, but he told me, Doc told him to stay out of it. When he
Yeah.
said, hey, what can I do? He told me from his own mouth because he called me and he was just like, because he's another one of my older brothers. He reached out to me. At first I wasn't talking to him and stuff. And so we talk about it. He wanted me to tell him all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if you want to hear. Yes, I want to hear. So there's many of them that they know. So to me, it's
Mhm.
really sad for the people that pick up the books and never knew. But what's heinous and what's devious and evil is the people that know and they're protecting him. If they're saying free Malachi, if they're saying he's innocent, first of all, they're saying we're liars. And second
Mhm.
of all, like he actually did do these things and more
Mhm.
things. There are some things it's just like, I don't, oh, you don't want to talk about that? Okay, let's not talk about it because it goes deeper than what we're talking about,
Mm.
So, so the thing of the matter is like, at the end of the day, people are sitting there like, oh, the master teacher and all this stuff like that, but he didn't care. He did, like he, it was a money thing for him. This whole, all the books and all that stuff. I mean, even down to the Nuwaupian language. He heard us. We had, we were taught classical Arabic, and like kids do, they come up with their own little slang or jargon that he couldn't understand, and he was like asking us to teach him, our version of Arabic. And that's what inspired him to start creating another language in Nuwaupic and Nubic, and it started into this. And then he was like, "Oh, bring this word in. That sounds fancy." If people actually understood how the books were put together, if people actually understood how he really talked about people in the congregation, and I mean, he knew those things were going on. I mean, he would publicly talk about, "Yeah, I know I'm starving you guys, but look, y'all not fat like these people." He would make a joke about it. He would talk about it, people like their dogs. And so to sit here and to realize 15 years later, some of us are still getting under attack. I was never under attack. I've seen websites, people like, "Oh, we'll pay money for dirt on Nicole Lopez and her family." Like, really?
Yeah, she had websites.
I've stayed under, and I've still never backed down. I don't waste my time talking to those people because, I did years of being in those chat rooms, and the thing is, at the end of the day, they don't want to believe. There's no way that someone with sound, right reason, full faculty, nothing wrong with them, no type of mental illness, can hear what has happened, can read what has happened, can look somebody in the eye. Like his new attorney is supposedly someone that's
been molested.
Sexual abuse. That's bullshit. I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either.
How is it that you're someone that is claiming that you're a victim of child sexual abuse, you advocate for child sexual abuse, but you're gonna back a man who's been convicted and tried and convicted for child sexual abuse, and you have not once talked to anybody that actually testified? And another thing I would like to add, there was this campaign of getting all those Nuwaupians to make all these videos of "nothing happened to me, he's an innocent man," or whatever, so they could claim that those were the victims that testified and say they recanted. But outside of Habiba's video, all those other videos, those people never testified, but they had them there to say, "Oh, look, see, these victims testified, recanted." Not one victim, there was a letter that they had Tariq do and stuff like that, and Habiba video, but all them other videos that's floating around the internet, they were not the people that actually testified. And the crazy part about it is because most of those people who did the video turned around and said it like, "Damn, I had to wake up and realize this happened to me." And they'll talk to us like, some of them reach out, it's very few because, I'm tired of being like targeted and talked about and all this stuff. The minute I say something, then people want to, judge me. "Oh, look at this picture. She said she's abused." Do you even know about sexual abuse? You didn't even study, even, and then too, if I'm an adult in a picture, so what, But they want to find anything. When that guy was telling, basically try to imply to Target. So if he molested 1,000 kids, should he be under the jail? If he molested one child, like he should be under the jail. He did those things. So the thing is, people need to be, so sometimes I honestly feel it's a waste of time talking to those people. Like when I share my story, I'm sharing it with my art. And I'm sharing with, other people, because for me, I feel like if you don't, part of it was the secrecy. That's why this open secret and secrecy. So sometimes I say something just to speak up of saying, "No, this actually happened." I get it that there's 100 people saying it didn't happen. I get it that they're campaigning and they're bribing people. They tried me. I've had calls, I've had threats, I've had intimidation, I've had people, "What do you want anything?" What do you mean I want? I've been paid, really? It's all this propaganda, and then they're projecting the same thing that they're doing. "Oh, this, Tariq is a distraction." No, this phony ass bullshit petition isn't a distraction.
It's a distraction.
Now he's from Ghana. wait, I thought he was from Risk. Is he from Risk? Is he from Teaneck, New Jersey? Is he from Sudan? Now he's from Ghana. You know, they took a picture and photoshopped the Ghana flag. That
the
picture
Liberia,
had, the Liberian flag, that picture had a U.S. flag. And so you mean to tell me a religious teacher, a spiritual teacher, don't feel any way to take a picture with an American flag and have somebody Photoshop a Liberian flag, and now all of a sudden you're Liberian? Like, how do you sleep at night? How do people who know this? And the thing is, a lot of those people, they know it, you know. And then some people, another thing people throw out there, oh, he's our father. Hitler had family. It did not take away from the crimes that Hitler did.
That he committed.
Everybody
Good
has
point.
family,
Good
you know.
point.
So it's just like, to me, if someone could talk on the level of, we know he did this, that's where some people are like, oh, let's start the community over again. How are you saying start the community over again and you're still with he's innocent? Now, if you were saying, let's try to address these things, we love being in a community, we love living.
Let's do it the right way. Let's do it the right
sharing
way.
a bed,
Right.
you know, and not that I'm interested, but if you were to say, let's figure out how to make sure there's something in place that this type of atrocity doesn't happen again to children and stuff. I mean, that man could literally have sex with anybody he wanted to because he was a leader, male or female. So there's no reason for him to have targeted children. There's no reason for him to have pushed himself or hold people down and rape some people. Some people got raped. You know, it wasn't consensual on any regards, but nobody wants to talk about that. And so it's going to keep coming up. So they can't even get on the level of saying it happened. Like, how many people got to say it happened to them before you say, okay, maybe this happened? So they can't even, and they're somebody promoting that my religion is truth. No, it's not. There's no way your religion is truth. It's just another religion. You were better off with Christianity. you know, because like he just replaced the blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesus, and people don't even see that, you know. People don't even, like, you know, he has the power to do these. He, at any point, you know, whether he cared about us, whether he cared about his 160 plus children, whether he cared really about the souls of his congregations, 200 plus, but whether he gives a slightest damn about these people that are willing to die for him, to do all these things. They raised millions of dollars for him years ago. It still didn't help his cause. He knows he's not getting out, but these people are living, a lot of them, in poverty because they're giving everything to him, and he knows he's not getting out. He knows he did these things, and it's sickening that he's going to sit there and let people waste their life, give their money, lose their homes for something that he knows is not going to happen. You know, 1 minute they're saying he's innocent, then the petition says, oh, he wants to help, he's remorseful. Which one is it? You know? You know, and it's like, well, whatever happened to the man of miracles? Why don't he just walk out the jail?
Call the mothership. Call the mothership.
You know, like, he walked out of a locked room in the 80s. How come he can't walk out the jail right now? You know, and so, and it's sad. People want to believe that. And I know a lot of his kids, I mean, you know, they're my brothers and sisters too. It's hurtful. At the end of the day, these people are my family, whether they disregard me or not. But I'm not willing to sit there and lie, you know, just because of this. So if I'm the oddball, I'm the one that's going to be talked about, I don't care. But at the same time, you know, some of his kids and the people, they built their life around this. So if he's not the king, they don't get to be the princess or the prince that they was pumped their whole life saying they are. And then when you look at it, the people who are talking, like some of the kids who are saying stuff, they weren't even the kids that were the top kids. They were kids like he didn't even really give a shit about. You're like, what? You didn't even know your name.
They probably know your name. I was just going to say that.
They didn't even send you a birthday gift. You know what I mean? So, but they're like gung-ho because they don't have nothing. For them to say he did this, that means they have to admit to making a mistake. Our parents made a mistake. People made a mistake. They turned a blind eye because they had that much faith in the man, that they turned a blind eye to being humans, to being parents, to being responsible adults. Like, we were raised in this stuff. We were brought to it and raised in it, you know. But you know what you know what, like, it's just really sad and sickening. And I don't know, like, I mean, I guess in some ways some of it is helpful if it's getting to people, but a lot of those people that are supporting he's innocent and all that, they know he's not. That's the crazy part about it. They know he's not. They know he did these things. They talk about it in secret. They talk about how nasty he is. They talk about how gay he is and perverse he is and whatever. And they, some of them justify it. Oh, he has a problem. But, you know, but they're sitting there and they're harassing us for talking the truth.
Saying you lying. They're saying you did.
But in corners, oh yeah, I know this happened, and it's sad.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what to say at this point.
I mean, should we do a part 2?
We may have to. We might have to.
A series.
There's so much that we haven't even covered yet.
Nicole can man, that's like a 7-day talk there.
Yeah, because
Hey, but I want to make a couple of comments. You know, I don't want to say too much because, you know, people want to hear from you guys, but I do want to address a few things that people say all the time, and I see even people saying in the chat while this is going on. And one thing people need to ask the question: did or does York fight his case as a person who is innocent? And I ask that because if you look at the things that they do, that he's done, and that he spends most money on and most time on, they're all things that have nothing to do with his innocence. Like, for example, the whole Liberian issue, the whole Ghana issue. Y'all brought up the Ghana issue. At one point, it was UCC / kind of the Moorish paperwork issues. Then it was Native American issues. All of those issues that I just mentioned, and probably some I forgot to mention, they don't speak to his innocence. Okay, so that's number one. And then two, as Nikki brought up, York pled guilty in 2 cases: his federal case and his state case. The state case, the plea on the state is still intact. He never withdrew his state plea.
Okay.
And then the federal plea, he never withdrew his federal plea. And it's a big difference because York did not withdraw his plea. The judge rejected it, and that's a difference. So the only reason why he went to trial was because the federal judge rejected the original plea for 15 years. He said that was too low based on the sentencing guidelines. It had to be a minimum of 20. So that's the only reason why that plea was rejected. So he didn't pull it back. It was rejected by the judge. So, and I'm saying that to say that York himself pled guilty and never pulled them back, and that's a big difference even to this day. So it's a little sticky situation for Nuwaupians to champion for his innocence, but yet he's not pulling back his plea. He pleaded guilty or admission of guilt, and he never pulled it back. So if anybody looks at the case, say, okay, well, you all are saying that he's innocent. He's now saying he's innocent, but yet he refuses to pull back his state plea. So that was a couple of things that I wanted to say, and then another thing on this discrediting issue that I see a lot of Nuwaupians do with you all, with Nikki, with Tariq, with Habiba. They'll say things like, well, not so much with you, Nikki, but with Tariq and Habiba, they'll say things like, well, they testify one way, but then they recant. See, here's the affidavit, or look at Habiba's video, and so on and so forth. Now check the logic of this. They will try to discredit you, Tariq, and call you a flip-flopper and say, okay, you testified one way, then you flipped before the trial, then at the trial you said something, and now after the trial later you signed this affidavit, and so on and so forth. So you're not credible. We can't believe anything you're saying. And you're like, okay, fine, I give you that. And the same thing with Habiba. well, Habiba says one thing, and then she makes this video and an affidavit, and then later on she pulls back. So man, we can't believe her. So X her out. We can't. She's not credible. So okay, fine, we give you that. But now let's put York in the same situation. York initially said that he was innocent. Then he pled guilty twice, not once, twice. And now he's saying he's innocent again. So the logic still stands and it fits him. So if they're gonna rule you out, Tariq, and rule Habiba out or anybody else out based on that logic, they also had to rule out Dr. York. They also have to rule out York and say he's not credible. So anything that he says we should disregard because he flip-flopped. And not only did he flip-flop, but he refuses to remove the plea in the state case. He refused to remove it. And why he refused to move it, this is for people who always ask me that question, he refused to remove it because he really honestly believed in the Liberian hoax. And he was told that if he removed his plea, that Liberia couldn't come and save him, and he couldn't repatriate, because the only way they could repatriate him is if all of his legal matters are settled and nothing is active, nothing is ongoing. So he had to leave it in.
Oh, wow.
And then it switched from the Liberian thing to now the Ghana issue, and the same thing is happening there. So right now the thing is to go for a pardon. What people may not realize with pardons or clemency is that especially in physical contact or crimes dealing with rape or molestation, things like that, the victims of such crimes also have to account and forgive and have a say-so on the clemency or the pardon. And if you look up the clemency rule that they're going after, one of the first prerequisites or requirements is that it can't be a violent crime. It can't be a crime of violence against someone. So when you're talking about molestation, aggravated molestation, and rape and things like that, those don't even qualify for clemency or that type of pardon. And these are the things that Nuwaupians refuse to look up. And then another thing, the new attorney just received the trial transcripts about 3 weeks ago now. She announced it on Facebook, and she just received the trial transcript. That means up until 2 weeks ago, she had no idea about what anybody said. Right, she had no idea about what anybody said. So that's why she didn't contact anyone. And even right now, I doubt if she ever will contact any of you all to either even ask you questions. As a lawyer, she knows what to ask. She, especially after reading the transcript, she knows how to kind of ask you questions to see if.
Especially after being a victim herself.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
So these are the kinds of things that that I kind of deal with and address, and I usually address like the technical aspects of the case and what takes place behind the scenes, what were the options and things like that. And I've been doing that for years. I've been trying to educate Nuwaupians about the case, and my whole stance was to put the public or Nuwaupians, members of the organization, in a position of being a juror themselves. So what I would do is just give them the information. I would give them the court documents, give them the facts, give them all of the transcripts to the hearings and things like that, and have them fit the shoes of a juror, and then they can look at what was presented and make up their own minds. Because a lot of people want to rush to the end question and ask me, because I was there, they want to ask me, well, did he do it? Do you think he's guilty? I'm like, well, my opinion doesn't matter. Let me give you the information and you do the work. Because if I give you my opinion, that's too easy.
But that's what they're supposed to do. And that's what they're supposed to do. You're Nuwaupian. You're supposed to do the right knowledge and right overstanding and all that stuff. And people that he used to say all the time, York used to say it all the time out of his mouth, don't listen to what I say, research it. The information's out there.
Don't believe
Why
me.
aren't they doing that?
No, they don't. And there's a level of cognitive dissonance going on. And you all said it earlier. In order to be a Nuwaupian right now, it will be counterintuitive to think that he's guilty, because it doesn't go together. It's like oil and water. You can't be a member and believe that he's done anything. So it's already a given from the start that if you're talking to a Nuwaupian, they're already not gonna accept anything you're saying. So I want to say this one more point. because I'm just addressing some of the faulty logic that I see, especially recently. Another thing is that, and I seen this in the chat, is that people always ask the question, were you there? You know, were you there to see these things? Were you there? Were you that? You know, they ask me or they ask anybody else. Now, and I heard Prince York say this on one of the recent videos he made, that he said that I was there, you know, and I haven't seen my father do this and that. But now walk with me on this logic. Now,
Calculate.
York has over 100 children. Okay. Now let's just ignore any accusations of molestation and all of that. Let's just ignore that for a second. Now let's just say out of the 100 plus children that he has, all of that was consensual and legal. Everything. Let's just say everybody was above age and the whole nine. All right. Now the question to ask anybody is did you see York make those babies? And if they can't say yes that they saw him make legal and consensual sex to have those babies, then what makes you think that you are going to see illegal sex or anything like that takes place? So that kind of nullifies that whole thing about
Question.
Well, how do you know I was there and my father didn't do anything, or so and so he didn't do anything. Well, did you witness him make all the other children that everybody knows about that's perfectly normal and fine? And if that answer is no, then we can't count on your testimony of anything then, because you didn't even see the consensual sex going on.
Yeah, the argument
so
is right. Exactly. The argument is based on some bogus speculation, you know. Yeah, and it's like, okay, you don't even. And then when you looking at now, see, I didn't even know there's some of my ex co-wives who had children after I left that I never met, didn't know about. I didn't even know Fatima had a son. You know what I'm saying? She didn't have a son. She just had a daughter, you know, when I left. So it's like, how would he even know what was going on? Because he wasn't even conceived when half of this stuff was happening. So he doesn't even have a frame of reference really on what's going on. You know, it's just that's his father, you know, and that's the obvious position he's put in.
And sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to add to that is that, one, as far as I know, the actual transcripts were supposed to be legally sealed, so it's interesting that they have a copy. And two, even though, like, you know, every few years it goes up in these waves, yeah, we got something they were going to use, you know, not that I'm fearful of any of it, but when I saw the petition, I'm like, wow, that's kind of curious that you have a supposing, you know, survivor of child sexual abuse the man. So I sent an email to the prosecutor, and they were like, there's no way that a convicted sex offender is going to get a pardon from the president of the United States. They're like, it's never going to happen.
Great.
You know? So they're not even worried about it, because they're like, he's a convicted sex offender. There's certain things that's just not going to happen. So unfortunately, it's like another one of those money schemes. I don't know where it's going to. What's the purpose? Well,
that speaks to what I was saying. Even if people just even look up the rules for clemency, you'll see that there's certain requirements that you have to fit. You have to, and one of the things that bar you from even being considered for clemency and things are violent crimes. The crimes that they forgive or they commute, because you know the commuter sentence is to just, you know, let's say somebody gets sentenced for 75 years and you know they're of old age already, then their sentence may get commuted and they'll say, okay, well, you have time served, and they'll get released. But it's not a forgiveness thing. It's just that your sentence was commuted or whatever. But anyway, for all of these things, there's certain requirements, and one of the requirements is that it could be a non-violent crime. So that's another reason why they're legally not worried about that, because molestation, and that's another thing. You know, Nuwaupians will say that he's not in prison for molestation, you know, because he's in prison for RICO, you know, RICO conspiracy and this and that, whatever. And that really just comes from a ignorance of of the law and how, and the Mann Act and the RICO Act and how York was charged and things like that. So, but I'm not gonna get into that. It gets real long-winded. But the thing is that what he's convicted for is the Mann Act, which is the travel and transportation of minors across state lines for illegal sexual activity. Nobody ever asks, well, what illegal sexual activity? And the illegal sexual activity is in the destination state because you're going across state lines. So from New York to Georgia and then from Georgia to Florida, those are the violations where the federal receives its jurisdiction. So whatever is alleged to have happened has to be a crime within those states. So what is the state law that was violated in Georgia? It is molestation, and those violations are listed there, and then all of the acts are in the indictment and so on and so forth. So this is what they don't understand. So they always say that, okay, well, he's not really in for molestation. Okay, fine, but York's guilty plea in the state is for 77 counts of molestation and aggravated molestation. And that's still, and it was originally 208 counts. It was reduced to 77 to try to fit it within the plea of 12 years. The state was 12 years, the Fed was 15, and he was supposed to serve that at the same time. But like I said, the judge rejected the trial.
The irony of it is that they have this religion based on research and facts, and they don't research. There's no way, regardless of if the transcripts is supposed to be out or not, or being illegally sold or not, there's no way that you're going to read those transcripts and can ever reiterate free Malachi, he's innocent.
No way.
So
without having some, like you said, cognitive dissonance going on.
And I would say another thing that used to come up, I don't hear it as much, because they try to say the conspiracy thing about it being a closed courthouse, and it wasn't a closed. It actually, you could be in the other room and listen to the whole thing. But they didn't want
that's
them
where they kept
protesting, because that's where they know his MO. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna all show up, get everybody down here to show up at 3 o'clock to show them we have power and intimidate them. So there were actual people that were there listening to the trial from the other room.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to clarify that too. That the trial was not a closed trial. Anybody from the public, there was space for 50 people in the gallery of another courtroom, and we all watched it on closed circuit TV. But anybody from the street, from the public, could have watched it. So it was a public trial, but it was arranged where the jury was anonymous, and this is why the second courtroom was made, because the jurors' names and identity was supposed to remain anonymous. So that's the difference. Now the thing about the trial transcripts being sealed, because it was a public trial and because anybody from the public could sit there and witness and see everybody who takes the stand and listen to all the testimony, there was a question about why was it even necessary to seal the transcripts and things, but they were sealed anyway. But what Nuwaupians don't realize is that in 2005, now the trial took place in 2004. In 2005, the transcripts, the U.S. attorney, I believe it was Moultrie had filed a motion to have the transcripts released, but in a redacted form, and the judge granted it. That's what Nuwaupians don't realize it. But what happened is that York had no intention on seeking to try to have those transcripts released, because what happened is, as long as the transcripts are sealed and that it's not, in the hands of just the general public and even the members of the organization, that the organization can continue with the propaganda, because now nobody has anything to check it against. So a lot of flyers were made, a lot of things were said, and nobody knows better because they don't have access to the transcripts. And that was the intent of not pursuing to have them fully released, even in a redacted form. But even to this very day, you can look. It was sometime in March, I believe March 5th, 2005, where Moultrie filed a motion to have them redacted but released for the purposes of the media and so on and so forth. It's right there on the in the docket, and this is something that I brought forward to let the community know at the time, and York himself know, and the feedback directly from him was that no, we don't want them, we don't really want them out. But at the same time, they were saying, well, the judge kidnapped the trial transcripts. Why do you have it sealed and this, that, and the other. But
Mm.
behind the doors, it was like, no, don't let those things out. We want to tell our side of the story and things. So what York did, instead of testifying at trial on his own behalf at trial, he basically gave a story outside of the court scenario through phone calls and through letters, which doesn't count for anything. So all the things that people are hearing are not within the legal testimony. They're not sworn statements or anything like that. So anything could be said. And
Yeah,
mind you, on the stand, anybody can say anything as well, but at least you're held accountable for it under the penalties of perjury and so on and so forth. But York chose to avoid that and then say what he says through phone calls, the Isles of Patmos CDs that people are familiar with from 2004, even on the recent phone calls now with the attorney. None of that is under scrutiny by the law or held accountable for. So anybody can say anything. So those are just a few points I wanted to make.
And I would say, to piggyback on that, a huge point that always comes up after all these years is that the Habiba video. They boast that video like it's the holy grail, but then they never mention that it wasn't able to be admitted in court, because by the time it gets to court and she's asked about it from the judge, she was like, well, you could now be in perjury, for what you testified against. And then she admitted in the court that, what she did on the video was false, and she was told what to say. So, but they still have the video up anyway. They promote this video and they promote her as the star witness because that's the only video that they have from anybody who testified. All them other videos, those people did not testify. They have her video. But, when it came down to the legal aspect, they couldn't use it. But they're not telling their congregation this, and they know that their congregation is not really going to look it up. Because if they look it up,
know how exactly. Who knows if they would come to that point, even if they do look it up, because the facts are being presented to them on the site and on the forum. If a lot of them are on the forum, it's like, okay, the facts are being dispersed. So even if they did have the ability to look it up, Doc knows the power. He's been doing this for so long. He knows that we don't read on a large scale. He knows that most people don't read. They want the information fed to them, and if they do read, they read in the doctrine. They want some indoctrination, and they're in need of it. He knows this, and then he also knows that what he says is going to trump anybody from going to check out the situation, or even the ability of the brain to, once he gets inside of it, the ability to just completely bypass that which does not match up in your brain with the information you want in it. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we've all been there. We've been there in that mind state, which is.
You know what? Just speaking of mind state, during the trial, like leading up to the trial, but like during the investigation, when those children were taken, because the question came up asking us if we knew for certain any minors that are on the land right now that he was definitely, without a doubt, having sex with. So the kids that were taken is because their names was identified as, we've seen him have sex with these children. So when DFACS went in there, and that's another thing I just want to say, that since we're talking about this, because a lot of people say, oh, this whole thing and this overuse of force, and they came with guns and all this stuff. First of all, different people had different agendas of what they were going after, and because there was past talk about him having connections with Sudan and stockpiling weapons, and the Waco incident just happened, they came down there hoping that it wouldn't be a Waco. So, and again, it had nothing to do with us. We didn't know that they were doing that. Their intentions was to get him. They weren't trying to get other people. They took those kids because they said if there's any minors. So anyway, getting back to the minors, they were in the custody, and they tried to get, and at the time, because these kids were not like us, where we came to the realization of, oh shit, this is some fucked up shit. Really with me, my dad, when he found out, he was the one who kept pushing me to say something, because he said it's not fair to the children that are left behind and to the people that are left behind, because they didn't have your courage to wake up and get out, that that they're suffering, and they don't have the willpower to do better. So it was my dad who was pushing me when he found out, because at one point he was just like, maybe I'm supposed to save these kids, I'm gonna go on the land. And I'm like, no, you won't even touch it, they will get you.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, when they had those kids in custody and they tried to get them to talk, of course they did like they were trained to do. Nothing happened. He never touched us. They examined one of them, and they were saying, well, this is what a young girl your age inside should look like if she's not having sex, and this is what one has had sex, and so one of the kids, they were like, when they try to give them medical evidence of, we know you have been penetrated based on your examination, and then some of the kids was like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I had sex with one of the boys like 2 weeks ago, and they're like, well, you were here for a month. So the FBI, they were actually shocked that they wouldn't say anything, and we had to explain to them, like, if you would have come to me the year before,